One drunken text message. 3 simple words. Come get me. 10 minutes later, Lucien Moretti, the ruthless king of Boston's most dangerous empire, stood outside her door soaked in rain and something far more terrifying than desire. Selena Vale had spent 11 months keeping her distance, playing it safe, hiding behind professionalism. But tonight, everything she'd buried came crashing down. Because loving a man like Lucien Moretti didn't come with safety nets or second chances. It came with blood on expensive suits and enemies who saw weakness in affection. If you want to see how far love can fall into darkness, stay until the end. Like this video and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. Rain hammered Boston like the city had personally offended God. Selena Vale sat cross-legged on her apartment floor, an empty wine bottle tilted against her thigh, phone glowing in her palm like a loaded gun. She shouldn't have typed those words. She definitely shouldn't have hit send. But loneliness makes people stupid, and Selena had been lonely for so damn long that stupid felt like the only honest thing left. Her phone buzzed. On my way. 2 words, no questions, no hesitation. Her stomach dropped. Oh God. She pressed her palms against her eyes, wine sloshing warm and sour in her blood. What did I just do? What she'd done was invite Lucien Moretti, her boss, her secret obsession, the man who made boardrooms go silent and grown men sweat, into the messy, pathetic reality of her actual life. Selena stumbled to her feet, panic sobering her faster than coffee ever could. She kicked empty takeout containers under the couch, shoved laundry into the closet, tried to finger comb her hair into something less disaster adjacent. The apartment still looked like what it was, a shoebox with bad lighting and cheaper furniture, the kind of place people landed when they were running from something and hadn't yet figured out where they were running to. She'd been Lucien's executive assistant for 11 months. 11 months of keeping her head down, her feelings buried, her hands steady when he stood close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that probably cost more than her rent. 11 months of pretending she didn't notice the way he looked at her sometimes, like he was solving a problem he hadn't yet decided to fix. 11 months of playing it safe. And now she'd blown it all to hell with 3 words and too much wine. Knuckles hit her door. Not a knock, exactly. More like a statement. Selena froze. Through the peephole, Lucien Moretti stood in the hallway looking nothing like the man who sat behind mahogany desks in tailored suits that cost more than her car. He wore dark jeans and a black jacket slicked with rain, hair falling across his forehead, jaw tight with something that looked almost like concern. He looked dangerous. He looked real. She opened the door. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Rain drummed against the hallway windows. Somewhere down the corridor, a neighbor's TV murmured canned laughter. Lucien's eyes moved over her face, slow, deliberate, cataloging every detail like he was memorizing evidence. You're drunk, he said finally. Little bit. Selena wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware she was wearing an oversized sweater with a hole in the sleeve and leggings that had seen better decades. You didn't have to come. You asked me to. I was being stupid. Were you? Lucien stepped inside without waiting for permission, water dripping from his jacket onto her cheap linoleum. He closed the door behind him with the kind of quiet control that made her pulse spike. Or were you finally being honest? Selena's throat went dry. He moved through her apartment like he was conducting surveillance, taking in the stack of library books on the coffee table, the single dying plant on the windowsill, the framed photograph of her and her sister from 5 years ago when things were simpler and neither of them knew how badly life could break. This is where you live, Lucien said, not quite a question. Yeah. She tried to laugh, but it came out brittle. Not exactly penthouse material, I know. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Lucien turned to face her, and the space between them suddenly felt smaller than physics should allow. Why did you text me, Selena? Because I'm tired of being careful. Because I think about you every night, and it's killing me. Because I'm terrified that if I don't say something now, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering what could have happened if I'd been brave enough to try. I told you, she said instead. Wine, bad judgment, the usual. Try again. Lucien, you've worked for me for almost a year. His voice was quiet, but it carried weight the way expensive things always did. You've never once asked me for anything, not a raise, not a favor, not even a goddamn compliment when you've earned one. So why tonight? Why now? Selena felt her defenses crumbling like wet cardboard. You really want to do this? I drove across the city in a storm because you sent me 3 words. Lucian stepped closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. So yeah, Selena, I really want to do this. The truth crawled up her throat like broken glass. Because I'm tired of pretending I don't feel anything, she whispered. Because every time you walk past my desk, I forget how to breathe. Because I know it's stupid and unprofessional and completely impossible, but I can't. Her voice cracked. I can't keep lying to myself anymore. The silence that followed felt like falling. Then Lucien's hand came up, fingers brushing her jaw with a gentleness that contradicted everything she knew about him. His thumb traced the curve of her cheekbone, and Selena's entire nervous system lit up like a power grid during a storm. You think I don't know? His voice dropped lower, rougher. You think I haven't been watching you for months, trying to figure out if what I was feeling was real or just some fantasy I'd built in my head? Lucien, oh, you avoid eye contact when I compliment your work. Your hands shake when I stand too close. Last month, when I asked you to work late, you looked at me like I'd asked you to jump off a bridge. His fingers slid into her hair, tilting her face toward his. But you stayed anyway. You always stay. That's my job. Bullshit. The word landed soft but absolute. Your job is 9 to 5, basic admin, keeping my calendar organized. You stay until midnight. You anticipate problems before they happen. You've saved my ass more times than I can count, and you never ask for recognition. Maybe I'm just good at my job. Maybe you care about me. The accusation hung between them like a lit match near gasoline. Selena should have denied it. Should have laughed it off, blamed the wine again, rebuilt the professional walls that kept her safe. But Lucien was looking at her like she was the only real thing in a world made of smoke and mirrors, and she was so tired of pretending. Maybe I do, she breathed. Something shifted in his expression. Relief mixed with hunger, mixed with the kind of restraint that came from years of controlling dangerous impulses. Then let me make something clear. Lucien's other hand came up to frame her face, holding her steady, making escape impossible. If we do this, if we cross this line, there's no going back. No pretending it was a mistake. No casual. I don't do casual, Selena. When I want something, I keep it. Her heart hammered against her ribs. You're talking about me like I'm a business acquisition. I'm talking about you like you're the first thing in 5 years that's made me feel human instead of just functional. His forehead dropped against hers, breath warm against her lips. So I need you to be sure. Because once I have you, I won't let go. Not for anything. The warning should have scared her. Instead, it felt like permission. Selena's fingers curled into his jacket, pulling him closer, closing the last inches between them. Then stop talking and kiss me already. Lucien's mouth crashed against hers like a man breaking a vow. The kiss was nothing like she'd imagined during all those late nights alone in her apartment. It wasn't gentle or tentative or careful. It was raw and desperate, and flavored with rain and wine and 11 months of wanting someone you weren't supposed to want. His hands moved from her face to her waist, pulling her against him hard enough that she felt the entire solid length of him. Selena gasped against his mouth, and Lucien used the opening to deepen the kiss, tongue sliding against hers with the kind of confidence that came from knowing exactly what he wanted and how to take it. She'd never been kissed like she was necessary before, like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lucien pressed his forehead against hers again, eyes closed, jaw clenched like he was fighting some internal war. You're drunk, he said roughly. Not that drunk. Drunk enough. He pulled back, putting distance between them that felt like violence. I'm not doing this when you've been drinking. Selena stared at him, frustration and confusion swirling hot in her chest. You just kissed me like the world was ending. Because I've wanted to kiss you since the day you told off that executive who tried to grab your ass in the elevator. A muscle ticked in his jaw. But I'm not making this a one-night mistake because you were lonely and I was convenient. That's not what this is. Isn't it? Lucien's eyes opened, and the intensity there nearly knocked her backwards. You texted me at midnight, drunk and alone. I want you, Selena. I want you so badly it's been keeping me awake at night. But when we do this, and we will do this, I want you sober and sure and completely aware of what you're choosing." The declaration should have sounded arrogant. Instead, it sounded like a promise. "So what now?" Selena's voice came out smaller than she meant it to. "Now I'm going to leave before I change my mind." Lucian moved toward the door, then stopped, turning back to face her. "Tomorrow night, dinner. Just you and me and a conversation we should have had months ago." "That sounds like a date." "It is a date." He reached out, fingertips brushing her wrist. Just a whisper of contact, but it lit her up like a torch. "Get some sleep, drink water. And Selena?" "Yeah?" "Don't regret this in the morning." His eyes held hers steady and serious. "Because I won't." Then he was gone, door clicking shut behind him, leaving Selena standing alone in her apartment with swollen lips and a racing heart, and the terrifying certainty that her life had just pivoted in a direction she couldn't unpivot from. She pressed her fingers to her mouth, still feeling the ghost of his kiss. Tomorrow night, God help her. The next morning arrived wrapped in a hangover and panic. Selena stood in front of her closet at 6 a.m., trying to figure out what you wore to work when you drunkenly confessed feelings to your boss and then made out with him in your apartment. The professional blazer felt like a costume now. The pencil skirt felt like armor she no longer wanted to wear. Everything felt different. She settled on simple: black pants, cream blouse, hair pulled back in a way that said controlled, even though her insides felt like chaos. The subway ride to Moretti Global felt longer than usual, every stop a countdown to facing reality. The company occupied 12 floors of a glass tower in downtown Boston, all steel and intimidation and money that spoke in whispers rather than shouts. Selena had been terrified her first day. Now she navigated the marble lobby and security checkpoints with the ease of someone who'd learned to survive in dangerous territory. Lucien's office took up half the 42nd floor. Selena's desk sat right outside his door, close enough to hear his voice through the walls, close enough to know when he was in a good mood or when someone was about to get destroyed in a conference call, close enough to feel him even when she couldn't see him. She dropped her bag on her desk, booted up her computer, tried to pretend her hands weren't shaking. The door to Lucian's office opened. He stood in the doorway in a charcoal suit that probably cost $5,000, hair styled back, eyes sharp and assessing. To anyone else, he looked like he always did, controlled, powerful, untouchable. But Selena saw the way his gaze lingered on her mouth for just a fraction too long. "Morning," Lucian said, voice perfectly even. "Morning." She forced herself to meet his eyes. "Coffee? Already have some." He gestured to the cup on his desk, then added, quieter, "We still on for tonight?" Everything in her wanted to run. Everything in her wanted to say yes. "Yeah," Selena said, "we're still on." Something that might have been relief flickered across his face. "Good. 7 o'clock. I'll pick you up." Then he retreated back into his office, leaving Selena alone with her racing thoughts and the growing certainty that she'd just agreed to something that would either save her or ruin her completely. The day passed in a blur of emails and phone calls and meetings, where she took notes while Lucian negotiated deals that involved more money than she'd see in 3 lifetimes. She watched him work, the cold efficiency, the way he could silence a room just by looking up from his phone, the razor-sharp intelligence that made underestimating him the last mistake people made. This was the man the rest of the world saw, ruthless, calculating, dangerous. But she'd also seen him stay late to help an employee whose kid was sick, had watched him quietly donate to charities without PR announcements, had heard the exhaustion in his voice during late-night calls when he thought no one was listening. Lucien Moretti was a complicated man, and Selena was about to dive headfirst into that complication. By 6 p.m., most of the office had cleared out. Selena was packing up her desk when Lucian emerged from his office, jacket slung over one shoulder, tie loosened at the throat. "Ready?" he asked. "No." "Yes." They rode the elevator down in silence, standing on opposite sides like strangers, but Selena felt the weight of his attention like a physical thing. In the parking garage, Lucian led her to a black Mercedes that probably cost more than her student loans. He opened the passenger door without comment, waited until she was settled, then closed it with careful precision. As he slid into the driver's seat, Selena found her voice. Where are we going? Somewhere we can talk without everyone in Boston watching. People are watching? Lucian's hands tightened on the steering wheel. People are always watching. He drove them through the city as daylight faded into dusk, eventually pulling up in front of a restaurant Selina had never noticed before. A small Italian place tucked between two larger buildings, almost hidden, glowing warm through mullioned windows. Inside, it was all exposed brick and amber lighting and the smell of garlic and wine and something that felt like home even though she'd never been there before. The owner greeted Lucian by name, led them to a corner booth in the back where shadows pooled like privacy. They ordered wine. Food appeared without them asking. Crusty bread, olive oil, pasta that tasted like someone's grandmother had made it with her own hands. For a while they just ate. Then Lucien set down his fork and looked at her with an expression that was almost vulnerable. "Tell me something true," he said. Selina blinked. "What?" "Something real. Something you don't tell people." He leaned back, wine glass dangling from his fingers. "I want to know who you actually are, Selina, not the professional version. You." The request felt more intimate than anything physical. She swirled wine in her glass, watching the red liquid catch the light. "I have a sister, Elena. She's 5 years older than me, lives in Portland now, married to a nice guy who works in tech. We used to be close." "Used to be?" "She wanted me to play it safe. Go to grad school, get a normal job, date men who wore khakis and talked about retirement plans." Selina met his eyes. "When I took the job with you, she said I was making a mistake. Said men like you don't have personal assistants. They have casualties." "She's not wrong." "I know." Selina took a sip of wine. "But I was tired of playing it safe. I was tired of being the girl who never took risks, never did anything interesting, never let herself want something just because it was dangerous." "And that's what I am?" Lucien's voice was quiet. "Dangerous? You know you are. And you don't care?" Selina held his gaze. "I care. I'm just not afraid anymore." Something shifted in Lucien's expression, heat and hunger, and something deeper, something that looked almost like relief. "My turn," she said. "Tell me something true." Lucien was quiet for a long moment, jaw working like he was chewing on words he wasn't sure he should say. Then, "My family isn't what people think it is." "What do people think it is?" "Legitimate, successful, powerful, in all the legal ways." He set down his wine glass, fingers drumming once against the table. "They're not wrong exactly. Moretti Global is a real company. We move real goods through real shipping routes. Everything's documented and taxed and perfectly legal on paper." Selina's stomach tightened. "On paper?" "On paper," Lucian confirmed. "My grandfather built this empire on relationships that existed in gray areas. My father expanded it, and I've spent the last 5 years trying to clean it up without burning it down completely." "So you're telling me—" "I'm telling you that the man you're having dinner with comes with complications." His eyes found hers, hard and honest. "There are people in my life who carry guns under their jackets. There are phone calls I take in Italian that I don't translate. There are nights when I come home with blood on my hands that isn't mine." The confession should have sent her running. Instead, it just made him more real. "Why are you telling me this?" Selina asked. "Because if we're doing this, you need to know what you're getting into." Lucian reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers, tentative, almost gentle. "I'm not a good man, Selina. I'm trying to be better, but I'm not there yet. Maybe I'll never get there. And if you want out, if this is more than you signed up for, I'll understand." "Will you?" "No." The word came out rough, honest. "But I'll let you go anyway, because you deserve better than what I can offer." Selina looked down at their hands, his scarred and strong, hers smaller and softer, but both reaching towards something that felt inevitable. "What if I don't want better?" she said quietly. "What if I just want you?" Lucian's fingers tightened around hers. "Then you're either very brave or very stupid." "Maybe both." A smile ghosted across his mouth, real and warm, and so rare that it felt like witnessing something precious. They finished dinners talking about smaller things, safer things, favorite books, worse jobs, the way Boston changed when you stopped being a tourist and started being a resident. But underneath the easy conversation, something heavier was building. an acknowledgement that they'd both just stepped off a cliff and were waiting to see if they'd fly or fall. Outside the restaurant, rain had started again, soft and steady against the pavement. Lucien walked Selena to the car, opened her door, hesitated before she could get in. "Come home with me," he said. Not a question, but not quite a demand either. Selena's heart kicked hard against her ribs. "Lucien." Not for that. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. "Just come home with me. Let me make you coffee and show you the view from my windows and prove that I'm not just the bastard everyone thinks I am." It was the vulnerability in his voice that decided her. "Okay," Selena whispered. The drive to his place took 20 minutes through rain-slicked streets, ending at a high-rise that overlooked the harbor. The penthouse elevator required a key. The hallway was silent in the way only expensive real estate could manage. Then the door opened and Selena stepped into a world that felt like controlled chaos. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city glittering below like scattered diamonds. The furniture was all dark leather and clean lines, and the kind of minimalism that spoke of money and taste but not much actual living. Books lined one wall, real books, worn spines, the kind that had been read instead of just displayed. "It's not much," Lucien said behind her, and she almost laughed because his penthouse was bigger than her entire apartment building. "It's beautiful. It's empty." He shrugged out of his jacket, loosened his tie completely, suddenly looking younger and more tired than she'd ever seen him. "I bought it 3 years ago because my accountant said I needed real estate investments, but it doesn't feel like home. It's just where I sleep between work and more work." Selena moved toward the windows, pressing her palm against the cold glass. Below, Boston sprawled in all its messy, complicated glory. She felt Lucien come up behind her, not touching, but close enough that she felt the heat of him. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything." "Why me?" She turned to face him. "You could have anyone, models, socialites, women who actually belong in this world. So why me?" Lucien looked at her for a long moment, something raw working behind his eyes. "Because everyone else sees what they want to see," he said finally. "They see money or power or danger or opportunity. But you—" His hand came up, fingers trailing down her arm. "You look at me like I'm just a man, not a legend, not a weapon. Just someone who gets tired and makes mistakes and wants something real in a world made of smoke. Maybe that's all you are. Maybe that's why I'm falling for you." The words landed like an earthquake. Selena's breath caught. "Lucien, I know it's too soon. I know we just started this, but I need you to understand something." He stepped closer, crowding her against the window, hands framing her face with desperate tenderness. "I don't do anything halfway. Not business, not loyalty, not this. So if you're not ready for everything I am, the good parts and the broken parts, and the parts that'll scare you, then tell me now." Selena reached up, covering his hands with hers. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I'm terrified. But I'm not running." "Why not?" "Because I'm falling too." The kiss that followed was different from the one in her apartment, slower, deeper, weighted with something that felt dangerously close to truth. Lucien's hand slid into her hair, angling her head to deepen the kiss, and Selena melted into him with a surrender that should have terrified her, but instead felt like the first honest thing she'd done in years. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lucien pressed his forehead against hers. "Stay," he murmured. "Just sleep beside me. Let me wake up tomorrow knowing this is real." So she did. They fell asleep in his enormous bed, still half-dressed, curtains open to the city lights, his arm heavy across her waist like an anchor. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Selena felt like she'd finally stopped running from the life she actually wanted. The next 3 weeks felt like living in a different reality. Lucien kept their relationship quiet at work. No public displays, no announcement, nothing that would turn her into gossip fodder or paint a target on her back. But in private, he was insatiable in ways that had nothing to do with sex and everything to do with proximity. He wanted her there. Coffee in the mornings while he read financial reports, her feet tucked under his thigh. Late nights when deals went south and he needed someone to vent to who wouldn't judge him for the darkness that leaked out. Weekends when they ordered Thai food and argued about movies, and he looked at her like she was the only thing in his world that made sense. Selena moved through those weeks in a daze of happiness she didn't quite trust, waiting for the other shoe to drop. It dropped on a Tuesday. She was in Lucien's office going over his schedule when his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and something in his expression shifted, went cold and sharp and distant. "I need to take this," he said, already standing. "Alone." Selena recognized a dismissal when she heard one. She retreated to her desk, but through the closed door she could hear his voice, low, clipped Italian that sounded nothing like the man who'd kissed her that morning and told her she was beautiful. This was the other Lucien, the one who terrified boardrooms and made problems disappear. 20 minutes later, 3 men in dark suits arrived on the 42nd floor. They didn't check in with security, didn't announce themselves, just walked straight into Lucien's office like they owned the building. Maybe they did. One of them, older, silver-haired, with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow, paused at Selena's desk. "You're new," he said. Not quite a question. "I've been here almost a year." His eyes moved over her face, assessing, cataloging. "You're the girl, then." Something cold slithered down Selena's spine. "Excuse me?" But he was already moving past her, disappearing into Lucien's office and closing the door with a finality that felt like a threat. For the next hour, voices murmured behind that closed door, too quiet for Selena to make out words, but the tension bled through walls like smoke. When the men finally left, they didn't acknowledge her existence. Lucien emerged 10 minutes later looking like he'd aged 5 years. "Go home," he said flatly. "What? It's 3 o'clock. Go home, Selena." He wouldn't meet her eyes. "Take the rest of the day. I'll call you later." "Lucien, what's going on?" "Not here." Finally, his gaze snapped to hers, and what she saw there made her stomach drop. "Please, just trust me and go." So she did, because the alternative was pushing him when he clearly couldn't afford to break. But as she rode the elevator down, as she walked through the lobby and out into the gray Boston afternoon, Selena felt the first real tremor of fear. Because she'd just gotten a glimpse of the world Lucien actually lived in, and it looked nothing like love. It looked like war. Selena's apartment felt smaller than usual that afternoon, walls pressing in like they were trying to suffocate her. She paced the length of her living room, 12 steps from the window to the kitchen counter, 12 steps back, phone clutched in her hand like a lifeline that refused to ring. Lucien had said he'd call. That was 4 hours ago. Outside, Boston was doing what it always did, moving, breathing, living without giving a damn about the anxiety clawing through her chest. Cars honked, people shouted. Somewhere a dog barked with the kind of persistence that suggested its owner had forgotten it existed. Selena checked her phone again. Nothing. She threw it on the couch, watched it bounce once against the cushions, then immediately picked it up again because what if he called in that exact 3-second window and she missed it? "Get it together," she muttered to herself, but her voice sounded thin and unconvincing in the empty apartment. The way those men had looked at her, like she was a problem they were calculating how to solve. The way Lucien had looked after they left, like he was already mourning something he hadn't lost yet. Her phone finally buzzed at 8 p.m., vibrating angry against her palm. "We need to talk. I'm outside." Selena's stomach dropped through the floor. She looked down at herself, sweatpants, ratty t-shirt, hair piled on top of her head in a mess that could generously be called a bun. For half a second she considered changing, then decided that vanity was a stupid concern when your entire relationship might be about to implode. Lucien was leaning against his Mercedes when she came downstairs, hands shoved deep in his pockets, shoulders hunched against the evening cold. He looked exhausted, the kind of tired that lived in bones and couldn't be fixed with sleep. "Hey," Selena said, because sometimes the simplest words were the only ones that fit. "Hey." He straightened and she watched him try to arrange his face into something less devastated. "Can we drive?" "Sure." They got in the car without touching. Lucien pulled away from the curb with the kind of careful precision that suggested he was holding on to control by his fingernails. For 10 minutes, neither of them spoke. The silence felt like drowning. Finally, Selena couldn't take it anymore. "Who were those men?" Lucien's jaw tightened. "Family." "Your family carries guns to business meetings?" "My family carries guns everywhere." He took a turn too fast, tires squealing slightly against asphalt. "Sorry, I'm not..." I'm trying to figure out how to explain this without scaring you away. Try me. Lucian drove them to a parking lot overlooking the harbor, killed the engine, sat staring out at the dark water like it held answers he couldn't find anywhere else. The man with the scar, he said finally. That was my uncle, Vincent Moretti. He handles the parts of the business that don't appear on tax forms. Selina's pulse kicked. What parts? The parts that involve moving things that aren't exactly legal through shipping routes that aren't exactly monitored. Lucian's hands tightened on the steering wheel even though the car was off. Protection rackets, loan enforcement, the kind of revenue streams that require men with guns and flexible morals. And you, I'm trying to get us out of it. He turned to look at her finally, and his eyes were raw with something that looked like desperation. That's what the last 5 years have been about. Legitimizing everything, cutting ties with the old operations, building something clean. But your uncle doesn't want that. My uncle thinks I'm weak, soft, too American. Lucian's laugh was bitter. He's not entirely wrong. My father built this empire on blood and fear. I'm trying to build it on contracts and lawyers. Turns out the second way is a lot harder. Selina reached over, covered his hand with hers. His fingers were cold. What did he want today? She asked quietly. To remind me that I don't get to just walk away. That there are obligations, debts, people who expect certain things from the Moretti name. He turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers like he was afraid she'd disappear. And to warn me about you. The words landed like a punch. What about me? That you're a liability. That caring about someone makes you vulnerable. That enemies will see you as leverage and use you to get to me. His thumb traced circles on her palm, over and over, like he was trying to memorize the feel of her skin. He's not wrong about that either. Selina felt anger spark hot in her chest. So what? You're supposed to just be alone forever? Never care about anyone because it might be inconvenient for your uncle's criminal empire? It's not about convenience, it's about survival. Lucian pulled his hand away, dragged it through his hair. 3 years ago, my cousin fell in love with a teacher from Cambridge. Sweet girl, normal life, nothing to do with our world. Past tense. Selina's throat went dry. What happened to her? Someone who wanted leverage against my cousin kidnapped her, held her for 3 days. Lucian's voice went flat, emotionless, like he'd learned to tell this story without feeling it. By the time we found her, she was so traumatized she couldn't speak for a week. She left the city 6 months later and never came back. My cousin hasn't been the same since. The story hung between them like a ghost. So that's it? Selina heard her voice rising, couldn't stop it. You're going to end this because your uncle told you I'm a liability? I'm trying to protect you. By pushing me away? By being honest about what my life actually looks like. Lucian turned to face her fully, and the anguish in his expression nearly broke her. I'm falling for you, Selina. I'm falling so hard it terrifies me. But I can't be the reason you get hurt. I can't be the reason someone uses you to destroy me. Don't I get a say in this? Of course you do. Then here's what I say. Selina grabbed his face, forced him to look at her. I'm not running. I heard everything you just told me. The violence, the danger, the fucked up family dynamics, and I'm still here. So stop trying to make this decision for me. You don't understand what you're agreeing to. Then help me understand. She held his gaze, refused to let him look away. Stop protecting me from the truth and just give it to me straight. All of it. Lucian stared at her for a long moment, something working behind his eyes, war between the man who wanted to keep her safe and the man who was tired of being alone. Okay, he said finally, but not here. If we're doing this, if you really want to know everything, then you need to see it. See what? Where I come from. Funds. Lucien drove them north out of the city, into neighborhoods that got progressively rougher around the edges. Brownstones gave way to triple-deckers, gave way to industrial buildings, with broken windows and graffiti tags that looked like territorial claims. He pulled up in front of a warehouse that looked abandoned, killed the engine. This is one of the old family properties, he said. We don't use it much anymore, but it's where my uncle conducts business he doesn't want documented. Selina looked at the building, all rust and shadows and the kind of atmosphere that made you check over your shoulder. Why are we here? Because you wanted the truth. Lucian got out of the car, came around to open her door. This is what the truth looks like. They went inside through a side entrance that required 3 different keys. The interior was all concrete floors and exposed beams, and the smell of old metal and something else, something chemical, that made Selina's nose wrinkle. Voices echoed from somewhere deeper in the building. Lucien took her hand, led her through a maze of corridors until they reached a door with light bleeding out from underneath. "Wait here," he said quietly. "Don't come in unless I call for you." Before Selina could argue, he slipped through the door and closed it behind him. She stood in the hallway, heart hammering, straining to hear what was happening on the other side. Men's voices, low and tense, something that might have been Lucien's laugh, but harder than she'd ever heard it. Then a sound that made her blood freeze, something heavy hitting something solid, followed by a grunt of pain. Selina's hand went to the door handle. "Don't," she told herself. "He told you to wait." Another impact, another grunt. Fuck waiting. She pushed through the door into a scene that would have looked at home in a crime drama if it weren't so viscerally real. The room was sparse. Folding table, metal chairs. A man zip-tied to one of them with blood dripping from his split lip. 3 other men stood in various positions around the room, all turning to look at Selina like she'd just crashed a private party. Lucien stood closest to the zip-tied man, knuckles red, expression colder than she'd ever seen it. "Selina." His voice could have cut glass. "I told you to wait outside." "I heard—" She couldn't finish the sentence, couldn't tear her eyes away from the man in the chair. "Business meeting," Lucien said flatly. "Nothing you need to worry about." "That man is bleeding. That man stole $40,000 from one of our shipping contracts and thought we wouldn't notice." Lucien moved toward her, blocking her view. "Go back to the hallway. Now." But Vincent Moretti was already laughing, a sound like gravel in a blender. "So this is the girl who's got our golden boy acting like a civilian," Vincent said, circling around to get a better look at Selina. "Pretty thing? I can see the appeal." "Vincent," Lucien's voice carried a warning. "What?" "I'm just making observations." Vincent stopped a few feet from Selina, tilted his head like he was examining merchandise. "You know what you're getting into, sweetheart? You know what kind of man you're sleeping with?" "I know enough," Selina said, proud that her voice didn't shake. "Do you?" Vincent smiled, and it was the kind of smile that probably made grown men nervous. "You know that your boyfriend here has 13 kills to his name? That the business meeting you just interrupted involves convincing this gentleman that stealing from the Moretti family is a terminal decision?" Selina felt the blood drain from her face. Lucien stepped between them, voice dropping to something lethal. "That's enough." "Is it?" Vincent's eyes never left Selina. "Because from where I'm standing, this looks like a massive fucking liability waiting to happen. She's soft, Lucien. Civilian soft. The kind of soft that gets people killed when they become leverage. She's not leverage, she's mine." The possessiveness in Lucien's voice was absolute. "And if anyone touches her, if anyone even thinks about using her to get to me, I will burn this entire operation to the ground and salt the fucking earth." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Vincent's smile widened. "Now that's the Moretti I remember." Lucien grabbed Selina's arm, not rough, but firm enough to communicate urgency. "We're leaving." He half-dragged her back through the corridors, out into the cold night air, didn't stop until they reached the car. Then he braced his hands on the hood, head down, breathing hard like he'd just run a marathon. "I'm sorry," he said roughly. "I shouldn't have brought you here. That was stupid." 13? Selina's voice came out smaller than she meant it to. Lucien went very still. "He said 13 kills. Is that true?" "Selina, is it true?" He turned to face her, and the look in his eyes answered before his words did. "Yes," Lucien said quietly. 13 men. Over 8 years. Some of them deserved it. Some of them were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. All of them were necessary to protect the family. Selina felt like she was standing on ice that was cracking under her feet. "You've killed people." "I've killed people who would have killed us first if I'd given them the chance." He moved closer, but didn't touch her. "This is what I've been trying to tell you. This is the world I live in, the world my uncle lives in, the world that doesn't just let you walk away because you decided you want something different." "But you're trying. You said you're trying to change things." "Oh, I am. I've spent 5 years building legitimate operations, cutting ties with the old ways, trying to turn the Moretti name into something that doesn't require violence to maintain. Lucian's laugh was bitter. But changing an empire built on blood takes time. And in the meantime, I still have to be the man who can stand in a room with my uncle and make it clear that crossing me has consequences. Selina wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite her jacket. I need you to understand something, Lucian continued, voice rough. I'm not a good man. I'm trying to become one, but I'm not there yet. Maybe I'll never get there. And if that's too much, if knowing what I've done is too much, then I'll drive you home right now and we'll end this before anyone gets hurt. The offer should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like a test. Selina looked at him, really looked at him, saw the exhaustion carved into the lines around his eyes, the blood still staining his knuckles, the desperate hope fighting with resignation in his expression. Take me home, she said. Something died in his eyes. Okay. The drive back was silent, heavy with things neither of them knew how to say. When they reached her apartment, Lucian walked her to the door like a gentleman, like they'd just had a normal date instead of a crash course in mob violence. I'm sorry, he said again. Selina looked up at him, at this complicated, violent, broken man who'd somehow become the center of her world in less than a month. I need time, she said, to process, to think. I understand. She went inside, closed the door, listened to his footsteps retreat down the hallway. Then she slid down the wall and tried very hard not to cry. 3 days passed without contact. Selina went to work because the alternative was sitting in her apartment losing her mind. Lucien was professional, distant, treating her exactly like the executive assistant she was supposed to be. No private looks, no lingering touches, no indication that they'd ever been anything more than boss and employee. It was what she'd asked for. It felt like dying. On the 4th day, Selina's sister called. Hey, stranger, Elena said, voice bright with forced cheer. Haven't heard from you in a while. Everything okay? Selina stared at her half-eaten lunch, trying to figure out how to answer that question honestly. I'm fine, she lied. Liar. You sound like you've been crying. I haven't. Selina stopped, because actually she had been crying, intermittently, for 3 days straight. It's complicated. Is this about your boss? The question landed like a grenade. How did you… Please, I'm your sister. I can hear it in your voice when you talk about him. Elena's tone shifted, went softer. What happened? And because Selina was exhausted and heartbroken and desperately needed someone to talk to, she told her everything. The relationship, the warnings, the warehouse, the 13 kills. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long Selina thought the call had dropped. Elena? I'm here. I'm just… Jesus, Selina. You need to get out of there. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. You pack a bag, you quit your job, you come stay with me in Portland until this blows over. Elena's voice rose with urgency. This man is dangerous. His family is dangerous. You could get killed just by being associated with him. I know the risks. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you're in love with a criminal who's involved in things that could land you in prison or in a grave. Elena took a breath, clearly trying to calm down. I love you. I just want you safe. And this guy, no matter how much you care about him, is not safe. Selina closed her eyes. What if I don't want safe anymore? Then you're being an idiot. Thanks for the support. I'm being real with you because no one else will. Elena's voice cracked slightly. Mom and Dad are gone. You're all I have left. And I can't lose you to some mafia romance that ends with you as a statistic. The mention of their parents hit like a physical blow. They died in a car accident when Selina was 21. Drunk driver, wrong place, wrong time. The kind of senseless tragedy that rewrites your entire understanding of how fragile life actually is. I'm not going to die, Selina said, but even she could hear how hollow the promise sounded. You can't know that. Not with the life he's living. Elena sighed. Just promise me you'll think about what I said, please. I promise. After they hung up, Selina sat in the break room staring at nothing, Elena's words echoing in her head. Maybe her sister was right. Maybe this was too dangerous, too complicated, too likely to end in disaster. Maybe the smart thing was to walk away before someone got hurt. But when Selena imagined her life without Lucien in it, no more midnight conversations, no more stolen kisses, no more moments when he looked at her like she was the only real thing in his carefully controlled world. The future stretched out gray and empty and unbearably lonely. She was still sitting there when Lucien found her 20 minutes later. "Hey," he said quietly from the doorway. "You missed the 3 o'clock meeting." Selena looked up at him, and something in her expression must have given her away because his entire demeanor shifted. "What's wrong?" "My sister thinks I should quit, move to Portland, get away from you before something terrible happens." Lucien leaned against the doorframe, jaw tight. "She's probably right." "Is she? I don't know anymore." He dragged a hand through his hair, messing up the careful styling. "I keep trying to do the right thing here, Selena. Keep trying to protect you, but maybe the right thing is letting you go before my world destroys you." Selena stood up, walked over to him, stopped close enough that she could feel the heat coming off his body. "What if I don't want to be protected?" she said. "What if I want to make my own choices about what risks I'm willing to take?" "Then you're choosing something that could get you killed." "Maybe. Or maybe I'm choosing something that's finally worth living for." She reached up, touched his face, felt the tension in his jaw. "I've been thinking about what you showed me, about who you are, and what you've done. And you're right. You're not a good man, but you're trying to be better, and maybe that's enough." "Selena!" "I'm not done." Her thumb traced his cheekbone. "My whole life I've played it safe, taken the easy path, and never rocked the boat. And you know what it got me? A tiny apartment, a job that was just a job, and a loneliness so deep I was drowning in it. Then you showed up and everything got complicated and dangerous and real. And I don't want to go back to safe. I want this. Even if it's terrifying, even if it might break me." Lucien caught her hand, held it against his face like it was something precious. "You have no idea what you're signing up for." "Then show me. Stop trying to protect me from the truth and just let me in completely." He stared at her for a long moment, war playing out behind his eyes. Then he kissed her. It was different from their other kisses, desperate and grateful and tinged with the kind of relief that comes from finally surrendering to something you've been fighting. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Lucien pressed his forehead against hers. "If we're doing this," he said roughly, "if you're really choosing this, then there are things you need to know, places you need to see, people you need to meet. I need you to understand exactly what my life looks like with no filters and no bullshit." "Okay, starting tonight, there's a family dinner at my uncle's estate. He's expecting me to come alone and stay in line like a good nephew." Lucien pulled back to look at her. "But if you're serious about this, if you really want in, then you come with me. And we make it clear to everyone that you're mine and I'm done pretending otherwise." Selena's heart hammered against her ribs. "That sounds like a terrible idea. It's probably the worst idea I've ever had." His smile was sharp and slightly unhinged. "But I'm tired of hiding, tired of letting my uncle dictate how I live my life. If you're choosing me, then I'm choosing you right back, publicly, permanently. Fuck the consequences." It was reckless. It was dangerous. It was exactly the kind of point-of-no-return decision that smart people didn't make. "What time should I be ready?" Selena asked. Something that looked like hope flickered across Lucien's face. 7, he said. "And Selena, wear something that'll remind every man in that room exactly who you belong to." Like. Selena spent 2 hours getting ready, trying on and rejecting half her wardrobe before finally settling on a black dress that was simple, elegant, and left just enough to the imagination to be dangerous. She straightened her hair until it fell smooth down her back, applied makeup with a shaking hand, stared at herself in the mirror and wondered if this was what it felt like to knowingly walk into a fire. Lucien picked her up at 7 sharp, looking devastating in a dark suit that probably cost more than 3 months of her rent. His eyes moved over her slowly, deliberately, cataloging every detail. "You're going to cause a riot," he said. "That bad?" "That good." He offered his hand. "Ready?" "No." "Yes." The drive north took 40 minutes, ending at an estate that looked like something out of a period drama. Wrought iron gates, manicured grounds, a house that was too big to reasonably call a house, and probably technically qualified as a mansion. Jesus, Selina breathed. Your uncle lives here. My uncle believes in appearances. Lucien pulled up to the front entrance where several other expensive cars were already parked. He thinks power should look like power. They got out, and Lucienne immediately took her hand, lacing their fingers together like a declaration. Whatever happens in there, he said quietly, stay close to me. Don't let anyone separate us. And if things get ugly, follow my lead. How ugly are we talking? Hopefully just verbally. His jaw tightened. But with my family, you never know. They walked up to this front door together, Lucienne's hand tight around hers, and Selina realized with perfect clarity that they'd just crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. This was it. The point of no return. A man in a suit, actual security, not staff, opened the door, eyes moving over them with professional assessment. Mr. Moretti, he said, your uncle is in the dining room. He's expecting you. His gaze slid to Selina. Alone. Plans changed, Lucien said flatly. The lady stays with me. The security guard's expression didn't change, but something in his posture tensed. Sir, your uncle was very specific. I don't care. Lucien stepped forward, forcing the man to either move or be moved. She's with me. That's not negotiable. For a moment, the situation balanced on a knife's edge. Then the guard stepped aside. They moved through a foyer that belonged in a museum. Marble floors, crystal chandelier, artwork that was probably worth more than Selina would make in her lifetime. Voices echoed from somewhere deeper in the house, mixing with the clink of silverware and crystal. The dining room was exactly what she expected. Long table, too many chairs, enough food to feed a small army arranged on platters that sparkled under chandelier light. 12 people sat around the table, all turning to look as Lucien entered. The conversations died instantly. Vincent Moretti sat at the head of the table, wine glass paused halfway to his mouth, eyes moving from Lucien to Selina with an expression that could generously be called displeasure. Nephew, he said slowly, I thought we discussed this. We did. Lucien moved further into the room, still holding Selina's hand. I decided you were wrong. The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. Excuse me? You heard me. Lucien pulled out a chair, gestured for Selina to sit, then took the seat beside her, directly across from his uncle. This is Selina Vale, my girlfriend, the woman I'm serious about. And before anyone says anything, yes, I know the risks. Yes, I know the complications. And no, I don't care. She's mine. I'm hers. Anyone who has a problem with that can discuss it with me directly. The silence that followed felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Then Vincent started laughing, slow and mean and genuinely amused. You've got balls, kid. I'll give you that. He set down his wine glass, leaned back in his chair. But bringing your pretty little civilian to a family dinner? That's not courage. That's stupidity. Call it what you want. Lucien's hand found Selina's under the table, squeezed once. I'm done hiding, done pretending, done letting fear make my decisions. Noble. Vincent's smile was all teeth. Also probably going to get her killed. But hey, at least you'll have been honest about your feelings, right? Vincent, an older woman halfway down the table, spoke up, voice sharp. That's enough. Is it, Maria? Because from where I'm sitting, our golden boy just painted a target on this girl's back and announced it to everyone in the family. Vincent's eyes never left Selina. How much do you think she's worth, sweetheart? To someone who wants leverage against Lucien, 50,000? 100? Whatever the number is, I guarantee someone in this room is already calculating it. Selina felt fear spike cold through her veins, but she forced herself to meet Vincent's gaze without flinching. Then I guess I'll need to be careful, she said. Vincent's eyebrows rose. You've got some spine, I'll give you that. She's got more than spine. Lucien's voice dropped to something dangerous. She's got me, which means she's untouchable. And I need everyone in this room to understand that touching her, threatening her, or using her as leverage will be the last decision anyone makes. I'm done playing by the old rules, Uncle. I'm done pretending that fear and violence are the only ways to maintain power. Things are changing. I'm changing them. And Selina is part of that future whether you approve or not. The declaration hung in the air like a thrown gauntlet. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Vincent picked up his wine glass, took a slow sip, set it down with deliberate precision. "You're making a mistake," he said quietly. "But you're a grown man. Your funeral. Glad we understand each other." Dinner proceeded with all the warmth of a hostage negotiation. People made small talk that felt like coded warnings. Glasses were refilled. Food was eaten without being tasted. And through it all, Selena felt eyes on her, assessing, calculating, wondering how long she'd last in a world that ate civilians for breakfast. Lucian never let go of her hand. Halfway through the main course, a younger man, maybe mid-30s, with slicked back hair and 2 white teeth, leaned across the table toward Selena. "So," he said conversationally, "what do you do, Selena?" "I'm Lucien's executive assistant." "Ah, so you work for him and sleep with him. Efficient." Lucien's fork hit his plate with a sound like a gunshot. "Marco," he said, voice lethal calm, "shut your mouth before I shut it for you." Marco held up his hand, smiling like he'd just won something. "Just making conversation. Make it with someone else." The rest of dinner crawled by like torture. Selena picked at her food, smiled when appropriate, tried to look like she wasn't completely out of her depth. Finally, mercifully, it ended. Lucien stood, pulling Selena up with him. "We're leaving." "Already?" Vincent's smile was sharp. "But we haven't even gotten to dessert." "I've lost my appetite." They made it to the foyer before Vincent caught up with them, hand landing heavy on Lucian's shoulder. "A word," he said. "Alone." Lucian looked at Selena, some silent question passing between them. "I'll wait by the car," she said. She walked out into the cold night air, breath fogging, arms wrapped around herself against the chill. Behind her, through the still-open front door, she could hear raised voices, Italian and English mixing in a cocktail of fury that made her skin prickle. Then the door slammed shut, cutting off the sound. Selena stood alone in the darkness, surrounded by expensive cars and the kind of silence that felt dangerous. A cigarette flared to life behind her. She spun, heart in her throat, to find Marco leaning against a Jaguar, smoke curling from his lips. "Relax, sweetheart. Just needed some air." He took a drag, exhaled slowly. "That was quite a performance in there." "I don't know what you mean." "Sure you don't." Marco pushed off the car, moved closer. "You know what I think? I think you're either very brave or very stupid. Maybe both." Lucien said, "You're untouchable. I heard him." Marco stopped a few feet away, close enough that she could smell the smoke and expensive cologne. But here's the thing about declarations like that. They only work if people believe them. If people think Lucien's actually willing to go to war over some girl he's known for a month. Selena's pulse hammered. "You should go back inside." "Should I?" Marco smiled. "Or should I give you some friendly advice?" "Walk away. Tonight. Pack your things, quit your job, disappear. Because the Moretti family eats girls like you for breakfast. And Lucien's good intentions aren't going to save you when someone decides you're worth more as leverage than as a girlfriend." "I'm not going anywhere." "Then you're stupider than you look." Marco flicked his cigarette into the darkness. "When they come for you, and they will come for you, don't say you weren't warned." He walked past her back toward the house, leaving Selena standing in the cold with fear crawling up her spine like insects. The front door opened again, and Lucien emerged looking thunderous. He saw her standing alone and moved immediately, closing the distance between them in seconds. "What happened?" His hands came up to frame her face. "Did someone... Your cousin gave me some friendly advice. Told me I should run while I still can." Lucian's jaw clenched. "Marco's an asshole." "Is he wrong?" "No." The admission seemed to cost him. "But he's not right either. You're not alone in this, Selena. You have me. And I meant what I said in there. Anyone who touches you answers to me. And if that's not enough..." Lucian pulled her against him, wrapped his arms around her like he could physically shield her from the world. "Then I'll burn the whole thing down," he whispered against her hair. "The family, the business, all of it. I'll burn it down and start over if that's what it takes to keep you safe." Selena closed her eyes, breathing in the smell of him, cologne and smoke and something darker underneath. She'd just crossed the point of no return, and God help her, she wasn't sure if that was the bravest thing she'd ever done or the stupidest. Maybe it was both. The ride back to Boston felt like driving through a nightmare that refused to end. Rain had started again, cold, relentless, hammering the windshield like it was trying to break through. Lucien drove with white knuckles and a jaw so tight Selina could hear his teeth grinding from the passenger seat. Neither of them had spoken since leaving the estate. The silence was suffocating. Selina watched the city lights blur past, Marco's words echoing in her head like a threat she couldn't shake. When they come for you, and they will come for you, don't say you weren't warned. Stay at my place tonight, Lucien said finally, voice rough. I don't want you alone. Lucien, please. He glanced at her, and the desperation in his eyes killed whatever argument she'd been building. Just tonight. Let me know you're safe for one goddamn night. So she did. His penthouse felt different now, less like luxury and more like a fortress. Lucien moved through the space, checking locks, closing blinds, pulling his phone out every 30 seconds like he was expecting bad news. You need to sleep, Selina said, watching him pace. Can't. Try. What I need... He stopped mid-stride, dragged both hands through his hair. What I need is for my family to stop being a fucking liability. What I need is for you to be safe without me having to declare war on my own blood. What I need is... His phone buzzed. Lucien looked at the screen, and his entire body went rigid. What is it? Selina asked. Vincent, he answered, putting it on speaker. What? We need to talk. Vincent's voice came through clear and cold. Tomorrow, noon. The warehouse on Mercer Street. Come alone. I'm done taking orders from you. This isn't an order, nephew. It's an opportunity. Something in Vincent's tone made Selina's skin crawl. I've got a proposition, one that'll solve both our problems. But you come alone, or the deal's off the table. The line went dead. Lucien stared at his phone like it had just bitten him. Don't go, Selina said immediately. It's obviously a trap. Maybe. Or maybe he's finally ready to negotiate. Lucien set the phone down, rubbed his face. Either way, I have to show up. If there's even a chance of ending this without bloodshed, I have to take it. Then I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. You don't get to make that decision for me. The hell I don't. Lucien moved toward her, cupped her face with both hands. You are the only good thing in my life right now. The only thing that makes any of this worth fighting for. I'm not bringing you into a potential war zone because you're feeling brave. And I'm not letting you walk into an ambush alone because you're feeling protective. Selina covered his hands with hers. We're in this together, remember? No more protecting me from the truth. No more making decisions without me. They stared at each other, deadlocked in mutual stubbornness. Finally, Lucien's shoulders sagged. You're going to be the death of me. Hopefully not literally. No promises. They fell asleep on the couch, fully clothed, tangled together like neither of them could bear an inch of distance. Selina woke twice during the night to find Lucien already awake, staring at the ceiling with an expression that looked like a man calculating how many ways the next day could go wrong. Morning came gray and unwelcome. Lucien made coffee that neither of them drank. Selina took a shower that didn't make her feel any cleaner. They moved around each other carefully, like people preparing for a funeral. At 11:30, Lucien pulled on a jacket and checked a gun Selina hadn't known he kept in the penthouse. You know how to use that? She asked, voice steadier than she felt. Yeah. He tucked it into a holster at his back, covered it with the jacket. Learned when I was 16, haven't had to use it in 3 years. His eyes found hers, hoping today doesn't break that streak. They took his car, drove through streets that felt too normal for what was coming. People going about their lives, buying coffee, walking dogs, completely unaware that two people in a black Mercedes were heading towards something that might explode into violence. The warehouse on Mercer Street sat in an industrial area that had seen better decades, all rust and broken windows and graffiti that looked like territorial claims. 3 cars were already parked outside. One of them was Vincent's Cadillac. Last chance to change your mind, Lucien said. Engine still running. Not happening. He killed the ignition. They got out into cold air that smelled like rain and motor oil. Lucien took her hand, squeezed once, reassurance or goodbye. Selina couldn't tell which. The warehouse door was unlocked. Inside, the space was exactly what she expected. Concrete floors, exposed beams, the kind of atmosphere that suggested bad things had happened here before and would probably happen again. Vincent stood in the center of the room, flanked by 2 men Selina recognized from the dinner. Marco leaned against a support column, smoking a cigarette with studied casualness. "Nephew," Vincent said, smiling like they were at a pleasant brunch instead of a potential crime scene. "And you brought the girl. How touching." "You said you had a proposition." Lucian's hand tightened around Selina's. "So talk. Straight to business. I like it." Vincent gestured to a folding table where papers were spread out like evidence. "I've been thinking about what you said. About wanting to legitimize the business. About going clean. And you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe the old ways are dying and we need to adapt." Lucian's eyes narrowed. "You're agreeing with me." "I'm being pragmatic. The feds are circling closer every year. Our connections in local government are retiring or dying. The protection rackets don't produce like they used to because everyone's got cameras now." Vincent picked up one of the papers, examined it. "So here's my proposal. You want to go legitimate? Fine. I'll back you. Support the transition. Help you cut the old operations and build something clean. In exchange for what? Control." Vincent set the paper down, met Lucien's eyes. "You get your clean empire. I get final say on major decisions for the next 5 years while we make the transition. After that, it's all yours to run however you want." The offer hung in the air like smoke. It was everything Lucian had been fighting for. It was also obviously a trap. "And what about her?" Lucien nodded toward Selina. "You said she was a liability. She is. But if you're determined to keep her around, I won't interfere." Vincent's smile was all teeth. "As long as she understands that the family business stays in the family. No pillow talk, no confessions, no running to authorities if things get uncomfortable." "I'm not a rat," Selina said, finding her voice. "Good. Then we have a deal." Vincent pulled out a pen, offered it to Lucian. "Sign the papers, transfer decision-making authority for 5 years, and we all walk away from this room as family instead of enemies." Lucian stared at the papers like they were written in blood. Selina felt her stomach drop because she could see him actually considering it, could see the exhaustion in his shoulders, the desperate hope that maybe this could actually work, that maybe his uncle was finally being reasonable. "Don't," she whispered. "Selina, this is wrong. You know it's wrong. It's the only way to end this without violence." Lucien turned to her, and the conflict in his eyes nearly broke her. 5 years, that's all. 5 years of playing politics, and then I get everything I've been working toward. Or 5 years of your uncle using your name to do things you can't take back. Selina grabbed his arm. "Listen to your instincts. This feels wrong because it is wrong." "The girl's smarter than she looks," Marco said from his column, flicking ash onto the concrete. "You sign those papers, Lucien, you're signing your life away. Uncle Vincent doesn't share power. He takes it." Vincent's smile disappeared. "Marco, shut your mouth." "Why?" "Someone needs to tell him the truth." Marco pushed off the column, moving closer. "Those papers don't transfer decision-making authority. They transfer ownership, all of it, every company, every asset, every account. You sign that, you're not partners with our uncle. You're his employee." The revelation hit like a physical blow. Lucian's face went cold, then hot, then something beyond fury. He turned to Vincent slowly, deliberately, like a man about to commit violence. "Is that true?" Vincent's expression didn't change. "Marco's exaggerating. Is it true?" "It's complicated." Lucian moved so fast Selina barely saw it. 1 second he was standing beside her, the next his hand was around Vincent's throat, slamming the older man back against a support beam hard enough to make the whole structure shudder. "Don't you dare!" Lucien's voice was barely human. "Don't you fucking dare try to con me with legal paperwork and family sentiment. You were going to take everything, everything I've built, everything I've fought for, and you were going to do it with a smile and a handshake." Vincent's men moved forward, hands going to weapons. Lucien didn't even look at them. "Anyone pulls a gun, I break his neck. Don't test me." "Lucien?" Vincent choked out, face going red. "Be reasonable." "Reasonable?" Lucien laughed, and the sound was unhinged. "You just tried to steal my entire empire with forged documents, and you want me to be reasonable? It's not stealing if you're too weak to hold on to it." The words were a mistake. Lucian's fist connected with Vincent's face with a sound like breaking ceramics. Blood exploded from Vincent's nose, spraying across his expensive shirt. He sagged against the beam, held up only by Lucien's grip on his collar. "I am not weak," Lucien said, voice dropping to something lethal. "I am trying to be better than you, trying to build something that doesn't require blood and fear to maintain. But you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe the only language you understand is violence." He pulled back for another hit. "Lucien, stop!" Selena grabbed his arm. "This isn't you. Don't let him turn you into... Into what? A monster." Lucien turned to look at her, and his eyes were empty in a way that made her blood freeze. "I've always been a monster, Selena. I just convinced myself I could be something else. But this is who I am. This is what the Moretti name means. No. Yes." He released Vincent, who slumped to the floor coughing blood. "This is the truth you wanted to see. The man I actually am when the mask comes off." Marco was already moving toward the exit, clearly deciding this situation had degraded past the point of profit. Vincent's other men hesitated, torn between loyalty and self-preservation. "Get out," Lucien said to them, "all of you, before I do something we all regret." They went. Even Marco, with one last backward glance that might have been sympathy or might have been relief. He wasn't on the receiving end. Vincent pushed himself upright, spitting blood. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." "Did I? Because from where I'm standing, the biggest mistake was believing family meant anything to you beyond profit margins. You think you can fight me? You think you can go to war with your own blood and win?" Vincent's laugh was wet, ugly. "I built this empire while you were still in diapers. I have connections you don't even know exist. And now that you've shown your hand, now that you've proven you're nothing but your father's son playing dress-up in a suit, then I guess we're done pretending." Lucien pulled out his phone, typed something fast. "I'm calling an emergency board meeting tomorrow morning, and I'm going to expose every illegal operation you're running under Moretti Global's umbrella. Every protection racket, every offshore account, every dirty deal you've made in my name." Vincent's face went pale beneath the blood. "You wouldn't. Watch me. That'll destroy the company, tank the stock, bring federal investigations down on all of us." "I know." Lucien's smile was sharp enough to cut. "But you said it yourself, maybe the old ways need to die. So let's burn it down and see what grows from the ashes." He turned, took Selena's hand, started walking toward the exit. They made it 5 steps before Vincent's voice stopped them. "She'll be dead within a week." Lucien froze. "You think I'm the only one who sees her as leverage?" Vincent had pulled himself to his feet, steadying himself against the beam. "You think the families we do business with, the people who depend on our operations, are just going to let you destroy everything without retaliation? They'll come for her, Lucien. They'll take her apart piece by piece and make you watch. And all your declarations about burning things down won't mean shit when you're holding what's left of her in your arms." The threat hung in the air like poison. Selena felt Lucien's hand tighten around hers, not protectively, but with the desperate grip of someone holding on to the last solid thing in a collapsing world. "Then I guess I'll have to make sure no one can reach her," Lucien said quietly. They walked out into gray daylight that felt like mockery. In the car, Lucien sat with his hands on the steering wheel, knuckles still bloody from Vincent's face, breathing like he'd just run a marathon. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "You shouldn't have seen that." "Seen what? You defending yourself against your uncle trying to steal everything you've built? Seen me lose control, seen the violence, seen..." His voice cracked. "Seen exactly what happens when I stop pretending I'm anything other than what I am." Selena reached over, turned his face toward her. "What you are is someone who's been fighting to be better than the world he was born into. And your uncle tried to exploit that, tried to use your desire for legitimacy as a weapon against you. He succeeded." Lucien's laugh was bitter. "Because now I have to choose. I can expose everything, destroy the company, bring down investigations, maybe end up in prison myself, or I can let him win. Let him take everything while I watch. There has to be another option." "There isn't. Not one that doesn't end with you in danger." He pulled away, started the engine. "Which is why you're leaving." The words landed like a slap. "What?" "I'm putting you on a plane tonight. Portland, like your sister wanted. You'll stay there until this is over." "Lucien, no. It's not a request." His voice went flat, emotionless. "You heard Vincent. The minute I declare war on him, you become the biggest target in Boston. And I won't..." I can't. The emotion cracked through. I can't protect you and fight him at the same time, so I'm choosing your safety. You don't get to make that choice for me. I just did. Selena felt fury rise hot in her chest. Pull over. Selena, pull over. He did, yanking the car to the curb with more force than necessary. Selena turned in her seat to face him full on. You told me no more protecting me from the truth, no more making decisions without me, that we were in this together. That was before my uncle threatened to kill you. So what? The second things get dangerous, you ship me off like luggage? Make unilateral decisions about my life because you've decided I can't handle the risk? You can't handle this risk. No one could. Then what was the point? Selena's voice rose. What was the point of me choosing you, choosing this life? If the first time it gets real, you just erase my agency and decide what's best for me? I'm trying to keep you alive. I didn't ask you to. The words exploded out of her, raw and desperate. I didn't ask you to wrap me in bubble wrap and hide me from the world. I asked you to let me in, to treat me like an adult who can make her own decisions about what risks she's willing to take. And what if your decision gets you killed? Then that's my decision to make. Selena grabbed his face, forced him to look at her. I love you. Do you understand that? I love you and I'm not running the second things get hard. So you can put me on a plane, but I'll just buy a ticket back. You can lock me in your penthouse, but I'll find a way out. Because I meant what I said. I'm in this. All the way. And you don't get to take that choice away from me just because you're scared. Lucien stared at her, something breaking behind his eyes. I can't lose you, he whispered. If something happens to you because of me, because of my family, because of choices I made, then we make sure nothing happens. Selena's thumbs traced his cheekbones, wiping away blood she hadn't realized was there. Together, like we're supposed to. For a long moment, Lucien just breathed, eyes closed, leaning into her touch like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Then his phone rang. He looked at the screen, and whatever color was left in his face drained completely. What? Selena asked. It's Marco, Lucien answered. What? Marco's voice came through tight with something that might have been fear. You need to get to your penthouse. Now. Why? Just go. And Lucien? I'm sorry. I didn't know they'd move this fast. The line went dead. Lucien was already accelerating before Selena could process what she'd heard. He drove like the city was on fire, cutting through traffic, running lights, hand white-knuckled on the wheel. What's going on? Selena asked, fear crawling up her spine. I don't know, but Marco doesn't scare easily. They made it to the high-rise in 15 minutes that should have taken 30. Lucien parked illegally, didn't care, was already moving toward the entrance with Selena half running to keep up. The lobby security guard looked up as they entered, started to say something, then seemed to think better of it at whatever he saw in Lucien's expression. The elevator ride up felt eternal. When the doors opened on the penthouse floor, Lucien went still. His apartment door was ajar. Not broken, not forced, just open, like someone with a key had let themselves in. Lucien pulled the gun from his back holster, held it low and ready. Stay behind me. They moved down the hallway together, silent, hearts hammering. Lucien pushed the door open with his foot. The apartment looked exactly like they'd left it that morning, until Selena saw the dining table. An envelope sat in the center. White, expensive stationery, sealed with red wax that looked disturbingly like blood. Lucien approached it like it might explode. When he opened it, a single photograph fell out. Selena picked it up before she could stop herself, then wished she hadn't. It was her, leaving work yesterday, walking to her car, completely unaware she was being watched. Written on the back in neat handwriting. We know where she goes, we know when she's alone. Walk away from the board meeting, or she disappears. You have 24 hours to decide. The photograph slipped from Selena's fingers. Lucien stood frozen, staring at it on the floor like it was a snake. Then he moved, fast, violent, sweeping everything off the dining table in one motion. Glass shattered, paper scattered. The sound of destruction echoed through the penthouse like thunder. Fuck! He kicked a chair, sent it skidding across marble. Fuck! Selena had never seen him lose control like this. Complete, total, unraveling rage mixed with terror. They were in my home. His voice shook. They walked into my home and left a threat on my table, and I didn't even know, didn't feel it, didn't. He stopped mid-sentence, breathing hard, and when he looked at Selena, his eyes were hollow. You have to leave, he said. Right now, tonight. I'll put you on a plane to anywhere. Europe, Asia, somewhere they can't reach you. I'll give you money, new identity, whatever you need. Lucien, please. The word broke. Please, Selena. I can't fight them if I'm worried about you. Can't make the right decisions if every choice might get you killed. So please, for once, just let me protect you. Selena looked at him, this powerful, dangerous man completely undone by fear for her safety, and felt something shift inside her chest. Okay, she whispered. Relief flooded his face, but on one condition. The relief died. What condition? You don't go to that board meeting. You don't expose Vincent. You give him what he wants, and we both walk away. Selena moved toward him, took his hands. Your empire isn't worth dying for. Your revenge isn't worth my life or yours. So we take the loss, and we start over somewhere else. Together. Lucien stared at her like she'd just asked him to cut off his own arm. I can't do that. Why not? Because if I give in now, if I let Vincent win, then everyone who's ever threatened me will know that all they have to do is threaten you, and I'll fold. You'll never be safe. Not really. There'll always be someone who thinks they can use you as leverage. So what's the alternative? You fight him, he kills me anyway? The alternative, Lucien's jaw clenched. The alternative is I end this, permanently, the way my father would have ended it. The implication settled over Selena like ice water. You're talking about killing him. I'm talking about removing a threat to everything I care about. Lucien, if you do that, you become exactly what you've been trying not to be. You become the monster everyone already thinks you are. Maybe I've been a monster all along. He pulled away from her, moved to the window, stared out at the city like it held answers. Maybe all this time I've been pretending I could be something different, something better. I was just lying to myself. Because when it comes down to it, when someone threatens the one person I actually love, my first instinct isn't lawyers or negotiations or playing by civilized rules. It's violence. That doesn't make you a monster. That makes you human. Does it? He turned back to her, and the look in his eyes was hollow. Because right now, standing here knowing someone broke into my home and photographed you without your knowledge, all I can think about is how many different ways I could make Vincent Moretti suffer before he dies. And I want it, not just as a solution to a problem, but because I want him to hurt the way he's made me hurt. Selena felt her heart breaking for this complicated, violent, desperate man. So what happens now? She asked quietly. Now? Lucien's smile was sharp and wrong. Now you get on a plane like I asked, and I do what I should have done years ago instead of playing at being legitimate. Which is? I become my father's son. The declaration hung in the air like a funeral bell. Selena looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the exact moment the last piece of the man she'd fallen in love with disappeared behind something colder, harder, irrevocably changed. If you do this, she said, voice barely above a whisper, if you go down this path, you don't come back from it. You know that, right? I know. And you're choosing it anyway. I'm choosing you. This is just what that choice looks like in my world. Selena wanted to argue, wanted to grab him and shake him and make him see that there had to be another way. Some solution that didn't require him to destroy himself to save her. But looking at his face, at the cold determination that had replaced everything warm and human, she realized the choice had already been made. She'd crossed the point of no return 3 weeks ago when she sent him that drunk text. He was crossing it right now, in his penthouse, with a photograph of her on the floor and violence in his eyes. And there was no going back for either of them. When do I leave? Selena asked, because what else was there to say? Tomorrow morning. First flight to anywhere far away from here. Lucien moved toward her, pulled her into his arms like he was already mourning something. I'll call you when it's safe. When Vincent's handled and the threat's gone. However long that takes. And if you don't call? His arms tightened around her. Then you build a good life somewhere else and forget you ever knew me. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. It is in my world. They stood there at the wreckage of his dining room, holding each other like people about to drown, while outside the city kept moving, and night kept falling, and somewhere Vincent Moretti was probably celebrating his victory, because he'd done it. He'd pushed Lucien past the point of civilization, past the point of law and legitimacy, and everything he'd been trying to build. He'd turned him back into exactly what the Moretti family had always been. A weapon wrapped in expensive clothes, and Selina was powerless to stop it. That night, they didn't sleep. They lay in Lucien's bed watching dawn creep across the city, neither one willing to close their eyes and waste what might be their last hours together. "I'm sorry," Lucien said as pale light turned the windows gray, "for all of this, for pulling you into my mess, for not being strong enough to protect you without becoming a monster. You're not a monster. I will be. By the time this is over, that's exactly what I'll be." Selina turned to face him, memorizing every detail, the scar above his left eyebrow, the way his hair fell across his forehead, the exhaustion carved into the lines around his eyes. "Then I'll love the monster too," she whispered, "because he's still you." Lucien's eyes closed, jaw clenching against emotion. When he opened them again, they were empty. "Time to go," he said. He drove her to the airport in silence, handed her an envelope thick with cash and documents he'd somehow procured overnight, new identity, clean credit cards, instructions for a lawyer in Portland who would help her disappear if necessary. At the departure gate, Lucien pulled her into one last kiss that tasted like goodbye and regret, and the death of something beautiful before it ever had a chance to fully bloom. "Don't look back," he said against her mouth. "Don't try to contact me. Don't do anything except survive until I can make this safe again. And if you can't, then you're free." He stepped back, already pulling away, already building walls she couldn't scale. "Free of me, free of this world, free to find someone who doesn't come with a body count and a target on his back." Selina wanted to argue, wanted to refuse to get on the plane, refuse to leave him alone to do terrible things in the name of protecting her. But she'd seen the look in his eyes. He needed her safe to do what came next. And whether she liked it or not, she loved him too much to take away the one thing giving him the strength to become a monster. So she walked through security, boarded the plane, took a window seat, and watched Boston disappear beneath clouds. And tried very hard not to think about what Lucien Moretti was about to become in her absence. Portland was gray and wet and utterly foreign. Selina sat in a coffee shop 3 blocks from her sister's apartment, hands wrapped around a cup she hadn't touched in 20 minutes, phone face down on the table like a bomb waiting to detonate. 48 hours since she'd left Boston. 48 hours of silence from Lucien. Elena had asked questions, too many questions, until Selina had finally broken down and told her enough of the truth to make her stop. Now her sister looked at her like she was a stranger, someone who'd made catastrophically bad decisions and was about to pay for all of them. Maybe she was right. Selina's phone buzzed. Her heart lurched. She grabbed it, flipped it over. Unknown number. She answered before rational thought could stop her. "Hello?" Silence. Then breathing, slow, deliberate. "Selina Vale." A man's voice, unfamiliar, with an accent she couldn't place. "You're very hard to find." Ice water flooded her veins. "Who is this?" "A friend of the family, Vincent's family specifically." The voice was conversational, pleasant, like they were discussing weather. "He wanted me to deliver a message. You left Boston very suddenly. That was smart, but not smart enough." Selina's hand tightened around the phone. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you don't. That's what everyone says." A pause. "Here's the thing, sweetheart. Your boyfriend made some noise about calling a board meeting exposing certain operations. Vincent took that personally. And when Vincent takes things personally, people tend to have accidents. Stay away from him." "Him?" The man laughed. "I'm not calling about him. I'm calling about you." See, Vincent figured out that the fastest way to make Lucien Moretti fall in line is to remind him what he stands to lose. So I'm going to ask you a question, and you're going to answer honestly. Where are you right now? Selina's mouth went dry. "I'm not telling you that. You're in Portland, probably near your sister's place. Elena Vale, married to David Chen, lives in the Pearl District in that nice condo with the rooftop garden." The voice paused to let the information sink in. "I could be there in 20 minutes, so could my associates, and we could have a very unpleasant conversation about loyalty and consequences, or Or what? Or you do the smart thing. You get on a plane back to Boston, you tell Lucian you're coming home whether he likes it or not, and you make sure he understands that if he goes through with exposing Vincent, you'll be the one who pays the price. Personally, painfully, in ways that'll make him wish he'd just signed the fucking papers when he had the chance. The threat was delivered with the casual certainty of someone who'd made similar threats before and followed through. You're bluffing, Selena said, voice steadier than her hands. Am I? Your sister's walking to work right now. Blue coat, black purse, taking the route through Chapman Square like she does every morning. Want me to prove I'm not bluffing? Selena's blood turned to ice. She looked around the coffee shop. Suddenly, every face looked suspicious. Every person could be watching her. What do you want? I already told you. Get on a plane, go back to Boston, deliver my message, and maybe everyone you care about gets to keep breathing. The line went dead. Selena sat frozen, phone still pressed to her ear, heart hammering so hard she felt it in her teeth. They'd found her, found Elena, knew exactly where they both were and what they were doing. And if she didn't go back, if she stayed hidden in Portland like Lucian wanted, they'd hurt her sister to prove a point. Selena threw money on the table, grabbed her bag, ran. Elena was exactly where the voice had said she'd be, walking through Chapman Square in her blue coat, earbuds in, completely oblivious to the danger circling her. Selena caught up to her, grabbed her arm hard enough to make her jump. Jesus! Elena pulled out her earbuds. What the hell? We need to go, right now. What are you talking about? Elena, I need you to trust me. We need to get you somewhere public, somewhere with cameras and witnesses. Selena was already pulling her toward the crowded Saturday market. Someone just called me, threatened you. They know where you live, where you work, your routine. Slow down. I can't slow down. They could be watching us right now. Selena's voice cracked. Please, just trust me. Something in her expression must have convinced Elena because her sister stopped arguing and let herself be pulled into the market crowd. They found a spot near the center, surrounded by vendors and tourists, and enough people that an attack would be witnessed by hundreds. Now tell me what's going on, Elena demanded. So Selena did. All of it. The threat on the phone, the photograph in Lucian's apartment, Vincent's ultimatum. By the time she finished, Elena looked pale. You have to call the police. And tell them what? That my boyfriend's uncle, who runs a criminal organization, is threatening me? They'll laugh me out of the station. Then call your boyfriend. Tell him to fix this. He sent me here to keep me safe. If I go back, if I walk right into the trap they're setting, he'll... Selena stopped because she didn't actually know what Lucian would do. He'll do something terrible, something he can't take back. Maybe that's what needs to happen. Elena grabbed her sister's shoulders. Listen to me. You can't protect everyone. You can't save your boyfriend from becoming what he's trying not to be. And you can't save yourself from the consequences of getting involved with him in the first place. So you need to make a choice. Run, really run. Not just to Portland, but somewhere they'll never find you. Or go back and face this head on. Those are both terrible options. Yeah, well, that's what you get for dating a mobster. Elena's voice softened. I love you. I want you safe. But I also know you're not going to be able to live with yourself if you run, and something happens to him because you weren't there. Selena closed her eyes, tried to breathe through the panic. Elena was right. She'd known from the moment she got on that plane that leaving Lucien to face Vincent alone was the wrong choice. Had known it with the kind of bone-deep certainty that comes from understanding someone too well to pretend otherwise. Lucien thought he was protecting her by sending her away, but all he'd really done was give Vincent leverage. I need to go back, Selena said. I know. Elena pulled her into a fierce hug. Be smart. Be safe. And if you get yourself killed, I'm going to be really pissed at your funeral. I'll keep that in mind. Selena bought a ticket on the next flight to Boston, leaving in 3 hours, arriving just after midnight. She spent those 3 hours trying and failing to reach Lucien. His phone went straight to voicemail. His assistant's number was disconnected. Even the main line to Moretti Global just rang and rang without anyone picking up. The flight was turbulent, matching the storm in her chest. When she landed at Logan Airport just past midnight, rain was falling in sheets that turned the runway lights into blurred halos. Selena took a cab straight to Lucien's penthouse, key clutched in her fist like a weapon. The building felt different, quieter, somehow, menacing. The security guard who'd always nodded at her wasn't at his desk. The elevator ride up felt eternal. Lucienne's door was locked, lights off inside. Selina let herself in, flipped switches. The apartment was empty. Not just empty of people, empty of life. The furniture was still there, but personal items were gone. Photos, books, the little things that made it his. Like someone had sanitized the space of anything that mattered, or like someone had prepared to disappear. Selina's phone rang, making her jump. Lucienne's number. She answered so fast she nearly dropped the phone. "Where are you?" "Portland." His voice sounded wrong, flat, distant. "Safe and far away from here like I told you to be." "I'm in Boston. I'm in your apartment." "Where are you?" Silence. Then, "You weren't supposed to come back." "Well, I did. Someone called me, Lucienne. Threatened Elena, knew exactly where we were and what we were doing, so I came back because I'm not letting your uncle use my sister as leverage." "Fuck." The word was exhaled like a prayer. Okay, stay there. Lock the doors, don't open them for anyone except me. I'll be there in 30 minutes. "Where are you right now?" Another pause. "Finishing something." "Lucienne." 30 minutes. "Please, Selina. Just trust me for 30 more minutes." The line went dead. Selina locked the doors, checked the windows, paced the empty apartment like a caged animal. Every sound from the hallway made her jump. Every creak of the building settling made her heart spike. 25 minutes later, she heard keys in the lock. The door opened to reveal Lucien, and Selina's breath caught. He looked like he'd been through a war. Suit jacket gone, shirt untucked and stained with something that might have been blood, knuckles split and raw. But it was his eyes that stopped her cold, empty in a way that suggested he'd crossed a line and hadn't looked back. "You're hurt," Selina said, moving toward him. "I'm fine." He closed the door, locked it, stood there like he didn't know what to do with his hands. "You shouldn't be here." "Too bad." "I am." She reached for his hands, examined the damage. "What happened?" "I handled Vincent." The words were simple. The implication was anything but. "Handled how?" Lucienne pulled away, moved to the window, stared out at the rain-soaked city. "He wanted a war. I gave him one. Called every family associate, every business partner, everyone who's ever done business with Moretti Global. Told them exactly what Vincent's been doing, the illegal operations, the offshore accounts, the money laundering. Then I made them choose. Him or me. And most of them chose survival. Chose the path that didn't end with federal investigations and prison time. His reflection in the window looked like a ghost. Vincent's been voted out. Board meeting happened this afternoon. He's no longer part of Moretti Global in any official capacity. So it's over. Not even close. Lucien turned to face her, and the look in his eyes made her stomach drop. Removing him from the board doesn't remove the threat. Doesn't stop him from coming after you to prove a point. Doesn't change the fact that he's got connections and resources and 20 years of favors he can call in. Then what does it change? It means he's isolated, vulnerable, and it means I can do what needs to be done without destroying the legitimate parts of the business in the process. Selina felt cold dread settle in her bones. What needs to be done? Lucien didn't answer. Lucien, what are you going to do? What my father would have done. He moved toward her, stopped close enough that she could smell smoke and rain and copper. What Vincent would do if our positions were reversed. What every Moretti before me has done when someone threatened the family. You're going to kill him. I'm going to remove a threat permanently. That's the same thing. I know. He reached out, touched her face with hands that were shaking slightly. I need you to understand something. The man you fell in love with, the one who wanted to go legitimate, who tried to be better than his bloodline, he's gone. He died the moment Vincent broke into my home and photographed you without your knowledge. What's left is just, his voice caught. What's left is exactly what I've been trying not to become. Selina covered his hands with hers. Then don't do it. Don't let him win by turning you into a monster. He's already won. This is just me deciding whether I'm going to be a monster with you alive or a civilized man at your funeral. Lucien's jaw clenched. And I choose you alive, every time, no matter what it costs me. Even if it costs your soul, I don't have a soul. Not anymore. He pulled away, checked his phone. I have people watching Vincent's location. He's holed up in the family estate with private security, thinks he's safe behind gates and guns. He might be right. He's not. Lucien's smile was sharp and wrong. Because in 2 hours, I'm going to walk through those gates and end this. And I need you to not be here when I do. I'm not leaving again. Selena. No. She grabbed his shirt, held on. You don't get to send me away while you do something that's going to destroy you. You don't get to protect me from the consequences of your choices. I'm staying. And if you're really going to do this, if you're really going to cross that line, then I'm going to be here when you get back. To remind you that you're still human even after you've done inhuman things. Lucien stared at her like she was speaking a language he didn't understand. Why? The word came out broken. Why would you stay with someone who's about to commit murder? Because I love you, and love doesn't run when things get dark. It stays, even when staying is terrifying, even when it would be smarter to leave. Selena pulled him down until their foreheads touched. So go do what you think you need to do. Be the monster Vincent made you. But when you come back, I'll still be here, waiting, refusing to let you disappear into the darkness alone. For a moment, Lucien just breathed against her, hands coming up to grip her waist like she was the only solid thing in a tilting world. Then his phone buzzed. He looked at it, and something in his expression shifted, went cold and focused and lethal. He's on the move, Lucien said. Left the estate 10 minutes ago, heading into the city. Why would he do that? Because he's not as smart as he thinks he is, or because he's desperate? Lucien was already moving, grabbing a jacket, checking the gun Selena hadn't realized he was carrying. Or because he's planning something, and I'm about to walk into exactly the trap I've been trying to avoid. Then don't go. I have to. He stopped at the door, looked back at her. Lock this behind me. Don't open it for anyone. If I'm not back in 3 hours, call this number. He handed her a card with a name and phone number. He's a lawyer. He'll get you out of the city safely. Lucien! But he was already gone, door closing behind him with a finality that felt like goodbye. Selena locked it, then immediately unlocked it again. Because she'd just told him she wasn't running, and that meant she wasn't staying behind while he walked into danger alone either. She grabbed her jacket, pocketed her phone, and followed. The streets were empty at 1 a.m., rain turning everything into reflections and shadows. Selena stayed far enough back that Lucien wouldn't notice her, close enough that she didn't lose sight of his car. He drove north, into neighborhoods that got progressively worse. Industrial zones transitioning to abandoned warehouses, transitioning to the kind of area where people didn't ask questions and didn't call the police. He pulled up outside a building that looked condemned, killed the engine. Selena parked half a block away, killed her own lights. Through the rain, she watched Lucien get out of his car, check his weapon, and disappear into the building. She waited 60 seconds. Then she followed. The building was all rust and decay and the smell of things rotting. Selena moved carefully, trying to keep her footsteps quiet on concrete that was cracked and uneven. Voices echoed from somewhere deeper in the structure. Lucien's and others she didn't recognize. She followed the sound, staying in shadows, heart hammering. The voices got louder, more heated. Then a gunshot cracked through the air like thunder. Selena ran. She burst into a large open space that might have once been a loading bay and stopped dead. Lucien stood in the center, gun raised, pointing at Vincent, who was on his knees with blood seeping through his shirt at the shoulder. 3 other men were scattered around the room, 2 on the ground not moving, one standing with his own weapon trained on Lucien. Everyone froze when Selena appeared. Selena, get out! Lucien's voice was raw with fury and fear. Drop the gun or I shoot her. The standing man, young, early 20s, shaking so hard the weapon wobbled, swung his aim toward Selena. Lucien's expression went absolutely empty. You really don't want to do that, he said quietly. Drop it, now, or she dies. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Lucien lowered his weapon, set it on the ground, kicked it away. Smart, Vincent said from his knees, voice strained with pain. See, this is what I've been trying to tell you, nephew. Love makes you weak. Makes you make stupid decisions like putting down your gun because some kid threatened your girlfriend. Shut up, Vincent. Why? It's the truth. Vincent laughed, wet and ugly. You could have been great. Could have run this empire the way it was meant to be run, with strength and fear and absolutely no sentiment. But you fell in love, and now look at you. Unarmed, outmaneuvered, about to watch the girl die because you're too soft to do what's necessary. I said, shut up. Lucien's hands clenched into fists. The young man with the gun looked between them, clearly out of his depth, weapon still shaking as he kept it trained on Selina. What do I do, Mr. Moretti? He asked Vincent. Shoot her, prove a point, then shoot him. Vincent's smile was all blood and teeth. Make an example. Show everyone what happens when you cross the family. The young man's finger moved toward the trigger. Selina saw it happen in slow motion, saw the intent crystallize, saw his hand tense. And then Lucien moved. He was fast, faster than someone his size should be, closing the distance to the young man in 3 strides, hand shooting out to grab the weapon and twist it away in one smooth motion that suggested years of training. The gun went off, bullet punching into concrete, and then Lucien had it, had reversed their positions, had the barrel pressed against the young man's temple. Run, Lucien said to him. Run and don't come back and count yourself lucky I don't kill you for threatening her. The young man ran, stumbling over debris, disappearing into the darkness. Lucien turned back to Vincent, weapon steady now, all hesitation gone. You want to see what happens when you cross the family? Lucien said quietly. Let me show you. He raised the gun. Vincent stared up at him, blood-soaked and defiant. Do it. Prove me right. Prove you're exactly what I always knew you were. Your father's son, built from violence, incapable of being anything else. I know what I am. Lucien's voice was flat. You made sure of that. His finger moved toward the trigger. Lucien, stop! Selina's voice cracked through the space like a whip. He didn't lower the gun. Stay out of this. I can't. I won't. She moved toward him, slowly, hands visible. This isn't you. This isn't who you want to be. You don't know who I want to be, see. I know killing him makes you exactly what he says you are. I know it destroys every chance you have of building something different. She stopped a few feet away, close enough to see the war in his eyes. I know that if you pull that trigger, you lose yourself. And I can't watch that happen. He threatened you, sent people after your sister, tried to steal everything I've built. Lucien's hand shook slightly. He doesn't get to walk away from that. Maybe not, but you don't get to throw away your soul for revenge either. Selina took another step. Give me the gun. Selina, give me the gun, Lucien, please. For an eternal moment, he just stood there, weapon pointed at his uncle, finger on the trigger, balanced on the knife's edge between who he was and who he was about to become. Then, slowly, he lowered the gun, handed it to Selina, and collapsed to his knees like someone had cut his strings. I can't do this, he said, voice breaking. I can't be what he wants me to be. Can't be what this family needs me to be. I'm not strong enough, not ruthless enough. I'm just... He looked up at her, and his eyes were devastated. I'm just tired, Selina. So fucking tired of fighting to be something I'm not. Selina dropped the gun, knelt beside him, pulled him against her. Behind them, Vincent laughed, weak but genuine. Pathetic, he said. Both of you. This whole touching scene? It's going to get you killed. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. Because this world doesn't reward mercy. It rewards strength. Then I guess we'll have to change the world, Selina said. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Lucien's head snapped up. You called the police? I called someone better. Marco appeared in the doorway, phone in hand, flanked by 2 men in FBI jackets. Called the feds about 30 minutes ago, told them exactly where to find Vincent Moretti, bleeding from a gunshot wound, surrounded by evidence of about 15 different crimes. Vincent's face went pale. You little shit. Yeah, family loyalty, whatever. Marco looked at Lucien. You were never going to be able to kill him. You're too decent for that. So I figured I'd solve the problem a different way. Vincent gets arrested, goes to trial, spends the rest of his life in prison. You get to stay clean. Everyone wins. Except me, Vincent snarled. Except you, Marco agreed cheerfully. But honestly, Uncle, you had this coming. The FBI agents moved in, reading Vincent his rights as they cuffed him and called for medical assistance. He was still cursing, still raging, as they dragged him toward the exit. Just before he disappeared, he looked back at Lucien. This isn't over, Vincent said. You think putting me in prison ends this? I've got friends, associates, People who owe me favors. They'll come for you. They'll come for her. And when they do, your mercy will be the death of both of you." Then he was gone, voice fading into the night. Marco helped Lucien to his feet. "You good?" "I don't know." Lucien looked at his hands, still shaking, still stained with blood that wasn't his. "Am I?" "You didn't kill him. That's probably good." Marco glanced at Selena. "She's either the best thing that ever happened to you or the worst. Haven't decided which yet." "Both," Lucien said quietly. "Definitely both." They walked out of the warehouse into rain that was starting to ease, dawn just beginning to touch the eastern horizon with gray light. Police cars and ambulances crowded the street. Investigators were already moving into the building. Someone would want statements, testimonies, explanations for why there were 2 dead bodies and a crime scene that suggested warfare. But right now, in this moment, Selena just held Lucien's hand and tried to process the fact that they'd both survived the night. "What happens now?" she asked. Lucien looked at her, really looked at her, like he was seeing her for the first time all over again. "Now?" He pulled her close, pressed his forehead against hers. "Now we figure out how to live in a world where I'm not constantly fighting my own family, where you're not constantly in danger, where maybe, possibly, we get to just be 2 people trying to build something real." That sounds impossibly optimistic. It does, doesn't it? His smile was small but genuine. "But after the night we just had, I'm willing to try impossible." Behind them, Marco cleared his throat. "Hate to interrupt the moment, but the feds are going to want to talk to both of you, probably for hours. So maybe save the romantic reunion for after you've given your statements?" Lucien sighed. "Yeah, okay." They spent the next 6 hours in separate rooms recounting everything that had happened. Selena told the truth, mostly, left out the parts about Lucien nearly killing Vincent, focused on Vincent's threats, the break-in, the photograph. Painted herself as a victim, which wasn't entirely inaccurate. When they finally let her go, dawn had given way to full morning, gray and cold but dry. Lucien was waiting in the lobby, looking exhausted but no longer haunted. "They're charging Vincent with attempted kidnapping, extortion, money laundering, and about 6 other things," he said. "He's not getting out on bail, probably not getting out ever." "And you?" "They want me to testify, cooperate with their investigation into the family's business operations." He ran a hand through his hair. "It's going to be messy. There are probably things they'll find that'll implicate me too. But Marco's cousin is a prosecutor, and she thinks we can work out immunity in exchange for cooperation." "We?" "I'm not doing this without you." Lucien took her hand, laced their fingers together. "If I'm testifying, if I'm cooperating, if I'm burning down everything my family built on corruption, then you're going to be right there beside me. Because I meant what I said. I choose you, every time, no matter what." Selena felt something loosen in her chest. Relief? Or release? Or maybe just the beginning of hope. "Okay," she said. "Then let's burn it all down, together." They walked out of the FBI building into a Boston morning that felt like a second chance. Behind them, evidence was being processed, charges were being filed, an empire built on blood was finally beginning to crumble. Ahead of them was just the future, uncertain, probably complicated, definitely not safe. But for the first time since this had all started, Selena felt like maybe they'd actually survive it. Maybe they'd even be happy. And maybe, just maybe, choosing the dangerous thing was the bravest thing she'd ever done. The fallout took 3 months to settle. 3 months of depositions and testimony and lawyers moving through Lucé. It's life like archaeologists excavating bones. 3 months of watching the Moretti Empire, the legitimate parts and the shadows underneath, get dissected in federal courtrooms while journalists circled like vultures waiting for the next headline. 3 months of Selena learning what it actually meant to stand beside someone while their entire world burned down around them. Vincent's trial was set for January. The prosecution had enough evidence to put him away for 20 years minimum, longer if they could prove connections to the 2 bodies found in that warehouse. Marco had turned state's witness, as had 3 other family associates who'd decided cooperation was preferable to prison. The Moretti name, once spoken in whispers that carried weight, now appeared in news articles with words like organized crime and racketeering and the end of a dynasty. Lucien handled it the way he handled everything, with controlled precision that masked the devastation underneath. He showed up to every deposition, answered every question, cooperated fully with investigators who looked at him like he was simultaneously victim and accomplice. He sold off the shadowy parts of the business, cut ties with anyone connected to Vincent's operations, restructured Moretti Global into something that could survive federal scrutiny. The stock took a hit, board members resigned, employees jumped ship for companies that didn't come with criminal investigations. But slowly, painfully, something cleaner began to emerge from the wreckage. Selena stayed. Not because it was easy, it wasn't. Not because she didn't have moments of doubt, she did. But because she'd meant what she said in that warehouse. Love didn't run when things got dark. It stayed. Even when staying meant watching someone you cared about carry guilt that wasn't entirely his fault. Even when it meant testifying yourself, sitting in cold rooms recounting threats and fear while lawyers scribbled notes and prosecutors built their case. She moved into the penthouse officially in November. Not because Lucien asked, he was too careful with her now, too aware of how much she'd sacrificed, but because her lease was up and the question of where else she'd go was absurd when they both knew the answer. Some nights were good. They'd cook dinner together, argue about movies, fall asleep tangled on the couch, like normal people building a normal life. Other nights, Lucien would wake at 3 a.m. from nightmares he wouldn't talk about, would stand at the windows staring at the city like he was searching for threats that no longer existed. Those nights, Selena would just hold him and wait for dawn, knowing that some damage took longer to heal than others. It was on one of those nights, 2 weeks before Christmas, that Lucien finally spoke the words he'd been carrying like stones. I should have killed him. Selena looked up from her book. They were on the couch, his head in her lap, her fingers moving through his hair. What? Vincent. In the warehouse, I should have pulled the trigger. Lucien's eyes were open but unfocused, staring at nothing. Because now he's alive, and every day I wait for the other shoe to drop. Wait for his associates to make good on his threat. Wait for someone to come after you to prove a point. No one's come after me. Yet. He sat up, pulled away from her touch. The trial's in 6 weeks. After he's convicted, after he's sentenced, his people are going to want revenge. And you... His voice cracked. You're going to be the easiest target. So we'll be careful. Careful isn't enough. Lucien stood, paced to the window, that familiar restless energy that appeared when he was working through problems. I've been thinking, after the trial, after this is finally over, maybe you should leave. The words hit like a physical blow. Excuse me? Not forever. Just somewhere safe, somewhere far from Boston and the family and all of this. He turned to face her, and the look in his eyes was wrecked. I can't protect you here. Can't guarantee your safety when there are people who blame me for destroying their empire. But if you're gone, if you're somewhere they can't find you, stop. Selena stood, crossed the room to him. Stop trying to send me away every time you get scared. We've been through this. I chose this. I chose you. And I'm not leaving just because things might get dangerous. They will get dangerous. Not might, will. Then we'll handle it, together, like we've been handling everything else. Lucien's hands came up to frame her face, trembling slightly. I'm trying to keep you alive. I'm trying to build a life with you. Those aren't the same thing. Selena covered his hands with hers. I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But if we spend all our time preparing for the worst, we never get to actually live. And I didn't survive the last 3 months of hell just to hide from the future. You're too brave for your own good. Or maybe I just love you too much to keep running. She pulled him down, kissed him soft and slow, tasting the fear and exhaustion and desperate hope on his lips. So stop trying to save me from my own choices. Trust that I know what I'm doing. Trust that maybe, possibly, we've already survived the worst of it. Lucien rested his forehead against hers, breathing hard. What if you're wrong? Then at least we'll have tried. They stood there in the dark penthouse, holding each other against uncertainty, while outside the city moved and breathed and continued not caring about their small, complicated love story. Vincent's trial started January 7th in a federal courthouse downtown. Selena sat in the gallery every day, watching Lucien take the stand and systematically dismantle his uncle's defense. He testified for 3 days, calm, precise, devastating. Laid out the organizational structure, The illegal operations, the threats and extortion and violence that had propped up the family business for 2 decades. Vincent sat at the defense table looking smaller than Selena remembered, orange jumpsuit replacing expensive suits, prison pallor replacing his usual tan. But his eyes still burned with fury every time he looked at Lucien. On the fourth day, they called Selena to testify. She walked to the stand on shaking legs, placed her hand on the Bible for the oath, and told the truth. About the photograph. About the phone call threatening Elena. About standing in that warehouse watching Lucien nearly become a killer to protect her. Vincent's lawyer tried to paint her as a manipulator, a woman who'd seduced Lucien and turned him against his family for personal gain. The prosecution objected to most of it, but enough got through that Selena felt stripped bare by the time she stepped down. Lucien met her in the hallway afterward, pulled her into his arms without words. "I hate this," she said against his chest. "Hate having my life dissected by strangers. Hate being made to feel like I did something wrong by falling in love with you." "I know. I'm sorry." "Stop apologizing. You didn't create this situation." "Didn't I?" He pulled back to look at her. "If I just walked away from you that first night. If I'd been smart instead of selfish. Smart. Then we'd both be miserable and alone, and you'd still be fighting your uncle." Selena grabbed his face, made him focus. "This isn't your fault, and I need you to stop carrying it like it is." The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they came back with guilty verdicts on all counts, the courtroom erupted. Vincent's lawyers immediately filed appeals. Journalists rushed for the exits to file stories. And Lucien just sat very still, staring at his hands like he couldn't quite believe it was finally over. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed them with questions Selena didn't answer. Lucien made a brief statement, something about justice being served and gratitude for the legal system. Then they pushed through the crowd to his car. They drove in silence, both processing, until Lucien pulled up outside a bar that looked like it had been serving cheap whiskey since before they were born. "I need a drink," he said. "Something that doesn't come from a bottle that costs more than rent. Something that tastes like honesty instead of pretension." So they went inside, just two people who'd survived something terrible and didn't quite know what to do with themselves now that survival was guaranteed. The bar was mostly empty, mid-afternoon light filtering through dirty windows. They took a booth in the back, ordered whiskey neat, drank in silence while an old jukebox played songs from decades past. "My father would be ashamed of me," Lucien said finally. Selena looked up. "Why?" "Because I cooperated with the feds. Because I dismantled everything he built. Because when it came down to choosing between the family empire and doing the right thing, I chose the right thing." He swirled whiskey in his glass, watching the amber liquid catch light. He spent his whole life building that power, maintaining those connections, and I destroyed it in 3 months of testimony. Your father built an empire on blood and fear. You're building something better. Am I? Or am I just building something smaller and calling it better because it makes me feel less guilty? Does it matter? Selena reached across the table, took his free hand. You made a choice. You chose legitimacy over power, cooperation over loyalty to a corrupt system. That's not weakness, that's courage. Funny. Doesn't feel like courage, feels like exhaustion. Maybe that's what courage actually looks like, not fearlessness, just showing up anyway when you're terrified and tired and ready to quit. Lucien's fingers tightened around hers. How are you so sure about everything? I'm not. I'm terrified most of the time. Terrified that Vincent's people will come after us. Terrified that you'll wake up one day and resent me for being the reason you had to destroy your family legacy. Terrified that 3 months from now or 6 months from now, you'll realize that what you feel for me isn't worth everything you sacrificed. That's not going to happen. You don't know that. I do. He brought her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles. Because in the last 6 months, you're the only thing that's felt real. The only thing worth fighting for. Everything else, the empire, the power, the family name, it's just noise. But you're the signal I've been searching for my entire life without knowing it. Selena felt tears prick her eyes. That's the whiskey talking. No, that's the truth talking. The whiskey just makes it easier to say. He smiled, small and genuine. I love you, Selena Vale. I'm probably going to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you choosing me. But I love you. And that's the only thing I'm completely certain about anymore. I love you too. The words came easier now, worn smooth by repetition and time. Even when you're exhausting, even when you're self-destructive, even when you try to send me away for my own good. Especially then. Especially then. They finished their drinks, paid their tab, walked out into cold January air that tasted like snow waiting to fall. What now? Selena asked. Lucian looked at her, really looked at her, the way he had that first night in her apartment when everything was still possibility instead of consequence. Now we figure out how to live, he said, how to build something that isn't defined by what we survived, how to be happy instead of just safe. That sounds impossibly hard. Probably. He pulled her close, wrapped his arms around her against the cold. But I'm willing to try if you are. Yeah, Selena said, breathing in the smell of him, whiskey and winter and something underneath that was just distinctly Lucian. Yeah, I'm willing to try. 8. Spring came slowly to Boston, winter refusing to let go without a fight. Lucian restructured his life the way he'd restructured his business, carefully, deliberately, cutting away everything toxic and building something cleaner in its place. He stepped down as CEO of Moretti Global, installed someone from outside the family, stayed on as chairman but with limited authority. The company would survive or fail without his direct control. And surprisingly, that felt like freedom instead of loss. He started seeing a therapist, something he'd resisted for years but finally admitted he needed. Twice a week, he'd disappear into an office downtown and come back quieter, more thoughtful, slowly learning how to carry his past without letting it define his future. Selena went back to school, enrolled in a graduate program she'd abandoned 5 years ago when money got tight, and survival took priority over dreams. Business management with a focus on nonprofit work, because if she was going to help Lucian build something different, she wanted the skills to actually make a difference. They moved out of the penthouse in March. The space had too many ghosts, too many memories of threats and fear. Instead, they found a brownstone in the South End, old brick and tall windows, and enough rooms that they could both have space to breathe. Selena's sister visited in April, cautious at first, then gradually warming when she saw that Lucian wasn't the monster she'd imagined. They had dinner, talked about normal things, and by the end of the night, Elena was laughing at Lucian's stories about disastrous board meetings with the easy comfort of families starting to form. I'm glad you didn't listen to me, Elena said as she was leaving, pulling Selena into a hug. About running, about playing it safe. You were right. This is better. Even though it was terrifying, especially because it was terrifying. Elena smiled. That's how you know it actually matters. Marco stayed in touch, having carved out his own path separate from the family. He'd cooperated with the investigation, gotten immunity, and now worked as a consultant helping businesses identify and eliminate corrupt practices. It was almost funny, the family troublemaker becoming the ethical compass. He stopped by the brownstone one evening in May with a bottle of wine and news. Vincent's appealing, he said, settling into their living room like he belonged there. But his lawyers don't think it'll work. He's looking at 18 years minimum. 18 years, Lucian repeated, like the number was hard to process. He'll be 74 when he gets out. If he gets out, prison's not kind to men his age. Marco took a sip of wine. I know I'm supposed to feel bad about that. Family loyalty and all, but honestly, fuck him. He made his choices. Now he gets to live with the consequences. That's cold, Selena said. That's realistic. Marco shrugged. Vincent spent 20 years hurting people to maintain power. Now he's powerless. That's not tragedy. That's justice. After Marco left, Selena found Lucian standing at the kitchen window, staring out at their small backyard where spring flowers were starting to bloom. You okay? She asked. I don't know. Should I feel guilty? About Vincent going to prison? About dismantling the family empire? About... He stopped. About being relieved that it's finally over? Being relieved doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you human. Sometimes being human feels like failing. He turned to face her. My whole life, I was taught that strength meant never showing weakness, never backing down, never letting sentiment interfere with business. And I did the opposite of all of that. Showed weakness by caring about you, backed down by cooperating with investigators, Let sentiment completely destroy any chance of maintaining the power my family spent generations building. And I should regret it. Should wish I'd made different choices. But I don't. His voice dropped. I wake up every morning next to you and I think, this is better. This small, complicated, difficult life is better than anything I had before. And I don't know what that says about me. It says you grew up. Selena moved toward him, wrapped her arms around his waist. It says you figured out what actually matters. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. Wisdom feels a lot like loss. Maybe that's part of wisdom too. Learning what to let go of. They stood there in their kitchen, holding each other while evening light faded and the city beyond their windows settled into night. And for the first time in longer than Selena could remember, the silence felt peaceful instead of threatening. June brought a heat wave and a letter. Selena found it mixed in with the regular mail, official prison stationery, Vincent's handwriting on the envelope. Her stomach dropped. Lucien. He was in his study, reviewing contracts that actually involved legal goods and transparent accounting. He looked up when she appeared in the doorway, saw what she was holding, went very still. When did that arrive? Today. It's addressed to both of us. They opened it together, sitting on the couch in the study, the letter balanced between them like it might explode. Vincent's handwriting was neat, controlled, the words themselves surprisingly measured. Lucien and Selena, I'm writing this from a cell that measures 8 by 10 feet. The view is concrete. The company is men who've made worse decisions than I have. And I have 18 years to contemplate how I ended up here. I should hate you both. By all rights, I should be planning revenge, calling in favors, making sure you pay for destroying everything I built. And part of me does hate you, probably always will. But another part, the part that has nothing but time to think, understands why you did what you did. You chose love over loyalty to a corrupt system. You chose building something clean over maintaining something powerful. You chose each other over everything I taught you to value. I don't agree with your choices. I think you're naive and idealistic, and you've thrown away power that most men would kill for. But I also think maybe that's the point. Maybe the world I built was always going to collapse eventually. Maybe you just hastened the inevitable. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I made choices knowing the risks, and now I'm paying the price. But I'm asking for one thing. Don't waste what you've built. Don't let guilt or fear make you small. If you destroyed my empire to build something better, then actually build it. Make it mean something. Because if this was all for nothing, if you end up miserable and regretful and wishing you just played by the old rules, then I was right all along. And that's a truth I'd prefer not to die believing. Vincent. They read it twice in silence. He's manipulating us, Lucien said finally, making it seem like he's accepted defeat when really he's just planting seeds of doubt. Maybe. Or maybe he's just a man in prison who has nothing left except the faint hope that his nephew doesn't waste the chance he sacrificed everything for. Selena set the letter down. Either way, the question's the same. Are we going to let guilt and fear make us small? Or are we going to actually build something that makes all of this worth it? Lucien looked at her, something shifting behind his eyes. What did you have in mind? I've been thinking. Selena turned to face him fully. You have resources, connections, experience running complex operations, and I'm about to have a degree in nonprofit management. What if we combine those things? Into what? A foundation. Something that helps people leaving lives of crime transition into legitimate work. Job training, legal support, housing assistance, all the things that would have helped the men who worked for Vincent make different choices. She watched his face, trying to gauge his reaction. We can't undo the past, but we could help build a different future for people still trapped in that world. Lucien stared at her like she'd just proposed something revolutionary. He stopped, started again. That's exactly the kind of thing my father would have hated. Good. Then it's perfect. A slow smile spread across his face, the first genuinely happy expression she'd seen in months. You're serious. Completely, unless you think it's stupid. It's not stupid, it's brilliant. He pulled her into his lap, kissed her hard and desperate, and filled with hope. It's the most brilliant thing anyone's ever suggested. And yes, let's do it. Let's build something that actually makes a difference. They spent the rest of the evening planning, sketching out ideas, arguing about logistics and funding and mission statements. And somewhere in the middle of debating whether to focus on Boston first or expand regionally, Selena realized this was what happiness actually looked like. Not perfect, not safe, not without complications or challenges, just two people who'd survived something terrible and decided to use that survival to build something beautiful. De Bastille. The foundation launched in September. They called it Second Chance Boston, which Lucien C. thought was too on the nose, but Selena insisted was exactly the point. The website went live on a Wednesday. By Friday, they had 20 applications from men looking for a way out of the life. Marco came on as a consultant. Elena helped with fundraising. Even some of Lucien's old business contacts, the ones who'd stayed legitimate, donated to the cause. It wasn't glamorous work. It was bureaucracy and paperwork, and late nights helping someone fill out job applications when they'd never had a legitimate job before. It was explaining to potential employers that, yes, this candidate had a record, but also, yes, they were worth the risk. It was hard, frequently frustrating, sometimes heartbreaking when someone they'd helped fell back into old patterns. But sometimes, often enough to matter, it worked. Selena watched Lucien transform through the work. Saw him talk to men who reminded him of people he'd known, people his family had used and discarded, and helped them find paths forward. Saw him use all that strategic brilliance that had once maintained a criminal empire to instead dismantle the systems that trapped people in cycles of violence. He was good at it, better than he'd been at running Moretti Global, because this time he wasn't building something out of obligation or fear or the weight of family expectation. He was building something because he chose to. On their first anniversary, counted from that drunk text message that started everything, Lucien took Selena back to the Italian restaurant where they'd had their first real date. The same amber lighting, the same exposed brick, the same owner who greeted Lucien by name and led them to that corner booth in the back. They ordered wine and pasta and for a while just existed in comfortable silence. "I've been thinking," Lucien said finally. "Dangerous. Probably." He reached into his jacket, pulled out a small box, set it on the table between them. Selena's heart stopped. "That's not—" "It is." He pushed the box toward her. "Open it." Inside was a ring. Not massive or ostentatious, just a simple band with a single emerald that caught the light like captured fire. "It was my grandmother's," Lucien said quietly. "The only piece of family jewelry I kept. The only thing that felt like it meant something beyond power and status." He took the ring out, held it between them. "I'm not asking you to marry me. Not yet. Because I know we're still figuring things out, still building towards something we can't quite see yet. But I'm asking," his voice caught, "I'm asking if you'll consider it. If you'll think about permanently tying yourself to someone who comes with a complicated past and an uncertain future." "That's the worst proposal I've ever heard," Selena said, but she was smiling through tears. "I know. I'll do better next time." "Next time?" "When I actually ask. When I'm sure I can give you the life you deserve instead of just the life I'm trying to build." He held her gaze. "But I wanted you to have this. Wanted you to know that when I think about the future, you're the only constant. Everything else is negotiable. But you're permanent." Selena reached out, let him slide the ring onto her right hand instead of her left. "A promise," she said. "A promise," he agreed. They finished dinner talking about the foundation, about potential expansion, about a life that looked nothing like what either of them had imagined a year ago, but somehow fit better than anything that had come before. Walking back to the car, Lucien stopped on the sidewalk, pulled Selena into his arms. "Thank you," he said against her hair. "For what? For that drunk text. For not running when things got dangerous. For standing beside me while I dismantled my entire life and tried to build something better." His arms tightened. "For choosing me when you could have chosen safety." "Safety's overrated." Selena pulled back to look at him. "This is better. Complicated and difficult and sometimes terrifying, but better." "Yeah?" "Yeah." They drove home through Boston streets that no longer felt threatening, just familiar. Parked outside their brownstone where lights glowed warm through windows. Walked inside to a life they were building together, imperfect, uncertain, but undeniably theirs. That night, lying in bed with early autumn rain pattering against windows, Selena thought about the girl she'd been a year ago. Lonely, careful, playing it safe because taking risks felt too dangerous. That girl would have been terrified by everything that happened. The violence and fear and having to testify in federal court and watching someone she loved nearly become a killer. But that girl also would have missed this, lying beside someone who'd chosen her over power, who destroyed an empire to build something clean, who looked at her every morning like she was the only thing in his world that made sense. "What are you thinking?" Lucien asked, fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. "That I'd do it all again, every terrifying moment, just to end up here. Even the part where my uncle tried to have you killed? Even that." She turned to face him, because the alternative was never knowing what we could be, and that would have been worse than any danger. Lucien kissed her, soft and slow, and waited with everything they'd survived to get to this moment. "I love you," he said. "In case I haven't mentioned that recently. You mentioned it this morning, and at lunch, and approximately 47 times since we got home. Then consider this 48. He pulled her closer. "I love you, Selena Vale, and I'm going to spend every day for the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you choosing me." "You already are," she whispered. "You just don't know it yet." Outside, rain continued falling on a city that had witnessed their story. The dangerous beginning, the violent middle, the hard-won piece of this ending. And inside their brownstone, two people who'd survived something terrible finally let themselves believe in something better. Not perfect, not safe, just real. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Guts. 2 years later, Selena stood in the main office of Second Chance Boston, reviewing applications for their expanded program, when Lucien appeared in the doorway holding flowers and wearing an expression she'd learned to recognize. "What did you do?" she asked, suspicious. "Nothing. Yet." He set the flowers on her desk, then reached into his jacket, the same movement he'd made 2 years ago at that Italian restaurant. Selena's breath caught. "This time," Lucien said, pulling out the emerald ring she'd been wearing on her right hand. When had he taken it? "This time I'm actually asking, not promising future questions, not hedging my bets, just—" He knelt, right there in the office, with staff pretending not to watch through the glass walls. "Marry me. Build this life with me permanently. Let me spend the rest of my days trying to deserve you." Selena looked at him, this complicated, violent, redemptive man who'd become her home. "That's still not a great proposal," she said, but her voice was thick with tears. "I know, but it's honest." "Yeah." She held out her left hand. "Yeah, it is. And yes." He slid the ring onto her finger where it had always belonged, then stood and kissed her while the office erupted in cheers they both ignored. Because this was their story. Not the fairy tale version where love conquered all without cost, but the real version where love was choosing someone despite the cost, building something beautiful from the wreckage, and refusing to let fear make you small. The version where sending one drunk text message could change everything. Where a ruthless man could learn tenderness. Where a careful woman could learn courage. Where two people from different worlds could create something entirely new, not perfect, not safe, but undeniably, permanently theirs. And in the end, that was the only story worth telling. The one where they both survived the darkness and found each other on the other side. The one where love wasn't easy, but it was real. The one where, despite everything, the violence and fear and terrible choices, they chose each other. Every single time. No matter what. And that made all of it. Every terrifying moment, every impossible decision, every sacrifice worth it. Rain hammered Boston the night Selena Vale sent a text she'd later call the best-worst decision of her life. 1 year later, she stood beside Lucien Moretti in a small ceremony surrounded by the people they'd become family. Marco, Elena, and David, staff from the foundation, even a few of the men they'd helped transition out of crime and into legitimate work. Vincent was absent, serving his sentence in a federal prison upstate, but in a strange way, he was present too. In the choices Lucien had made, in the empire they'd dismantled to build something better, in the permanent reminder that love was more powerful than legacy when you were brave enough to choose it. The ceremony was simple. No elaborate decorations, no hundreds of guests, no pretense of grandeur, just two people promising each other the truth, that life together would be complicated and difficult, and probably never fully safe, but that they'd face it together anyway. When the officiant pronounced them married, Lucien kissed Selina with the kind of desperate tenderness that came from knowing how easily this could have ended differently. How she could have ignored that drunk impulse and never sent the text. How he could have stayed away instead of coming to get her. How either of them could have chosen safety over risk at a dozen different points and missed this entirely. But they hadn't, and that made all the difference. At the reception, Marco gave a toast that was equal parts heartfelt and inappropriate, ending with, "To Lucien and Selina, proof that love is either the bravest thing you can do or the stupidest. Still haven't decided which." "Both," Lucien said, pulling Selina against his side. "Definitely both." Later, as the party wound down and guests filtered out into the Boston night, Selina found herself alone with Lucien on the brownstone's back porch, city lights glowing in the distance. "Any regrets?" he asked, thumb tracing her wedding ring. She thought about everything that had brought them here. The fear and violence and federal testimony, the loss of his family empire, the restructuring of their entire lives around something uncertain and fragile. "Not even one," she said. "Liar. You regret that terrible coffee I made our first morning together." "Okay, one regret. But everything else?" She turned to face him fully. "No, because all of it, every terrifying, impossible moment, led here. To us. To this life we built from the wreckage. And I wouldn't change any of it." Lucien pulled her close, rested his chin on her head, and just breathed. "I was so lost before you," he said quietly. "Didn't even realize it. Just thought that's what life was supposed to feel like. Empty and functional and driven by obligation. Then you sent me that text and everything changed. 3 words. 3 words that saved my life." He kissed the top of her head. "Come get me." And I did. And I'll keep coming to get you, keep choosing you for the rest of my life. Selina closed her eyes, let herself feel the weight of that promise. Not the promise that life would be easy or safe or without complications, but the promise that whatever came next, they'd face it together. 2 people who'd started with a drunken text and built something that survived federal investigations, criminal trials, and the systematic dismantling of a corrupt empire. 2 people who proved that love wasn't about finding someone perfect, but about choosing someone real and building something meaningful from that choice. 2 people who learned that the bravest thing you can do is let yourself be vulnerable with someone who sees all your broken pieces and chooses to stay anyway. As rain began to fall, because of course it did, because rain was there when this started, and it was fitting that rain would be here at this new beginning, Lucien and Selina stood together on their porch, holding each other against the storm. And for the first time in both their lives, neither of them was afraid of what came next. Because whatever it was, they'd face it together, every time, no matter what. And that was the only certainty that mattered.